Chapter 780. Judging from that person's facial features, he appeared to have just reached middle age. However, his gaze was extremely old. More importantly, the killing intent that surrounded him was not any weaker than the heaven demon old man's. As expected, true Lord Earth Fiend is here too. The upper echelons of the war tribe who had rushed over were terrified when they saw the silver-robed man. The silver-robed man was fighting true Lord Earth Fiend, who was as famous as the heaven demon old man. If true Lord Earth Fiend was allowed to sneak into the ancestral hall, no one knew what he would do. Fortunately, Qin Yu and Su Mo had noticed it in time and stopped true Lord Earth Fiend. While they were rejoicing, the upper echelons and elders of the war tribe were also shocked. Although Qin Yu and Su Mo's cultivation had increased by a few levels, they were still only heavenly gods. How did they discover and stop true Lord Earth Fiend? True Lord Earth Fiend's cultivation was not much weaker than the heaven demon old man's. He had also reached the advanced heavenly ethereal realm. Normally, a heavenly venerate could easily kill a heavenly ethereal realm mighty with a flick of his finger. Are they the mysterious young men who appeared in the war tribe? The people of the war tribe were not the only ones who could not figure it out. True Lord Earth Fiend, who had been thrown out of the ground by Qin Yu and Su Mo, was also shocked. That pair of eyes filled with bone-piercing killing intent was firmly staring at Qin Yu and his soul. After years of killing, true Lord Earth Fiend sensed that Qin Yu and Su Mo were very dangerous and could not be treated like ordinary heavenly venerates. However, if he could sense danger when they were merely heavenly venerates, it was enough to show that Qin Yu and Su Mo were hiding a big secret. True Lord Earth Fiend was secretly on guard and a strong sense of greed rose in his heart. Nangong Baking's order only asked them to leave 10 of the direct descendants of the war tribe. He did not say that they had to hand over any treasures they obtained. Of course, if they really had any precious treasures, they would not be so obedient even if Nangong Baking asked them to hand them over. Strictly speaking, their relationship with the War God Hall was just cooperation. Although they were the upper echelons of the War God Hall, they were not core members. Kill. Without waiting for true Monarch Earth Fiend to react, the war tribe's upper echelons and elders immediately unleashed their heavenly essence and surged forward, shaking the heavens. Apart from Zhon Wuqiong, who had entered the heavenly ethereal realm, the 3 supreme elders who were about to pass away had also entered the heavenly ethereal realm. Of course, compared to Zhon Wuqiong, who was at the advanced heavenly ethereal realm, the 3 supreme elders were only at the middle heavenly ethereal realm. Even so, a battle clan with 4 heavenly ethereal stage experts would definitely be able to rise to the top of the Shunju continent and even become a giant in the entire Void Zone. You overestimate yourself. True Lord Earth Fiend retracted his cold gaze from Qin Yu and Su Mo and looked at the 3 grand elders. He snorted coldly with undisguised contempt. His cultivation level was not much weaker than the heaven demon old man. He had already reached the advanced heavenly ethereal realm. The 3 supreme elders of the war tribe had just advanced to the middle stage of the heavenly ethereal realm and they wanted to fight with him. They were simply overestimating their abilities. Rise! True Lord Earth Fiend roared furiously and the earth shook violently. A bone-chilling Earth Fiend chi surged out from the depths of the earth and filled the area. The entire war tribe's ancestral land was shrouded in an Earth Fiend mist. True Lord Earth Fiend was just like his name. He cultivated the Earth Fiend Tao. The earth was boundless and the power of the earth was inexhaustible. Therefore, as long as true Lord Earth Fiend stood on the earth, he would be able to control the Earth Fiend chi from the depths of the earth and his battle strength would soar. In the past, true Lord Earth Fiend had fought against 3 heavenly ethereal realm experts and won. This showed how terrifying true Lord Earth Fiend's battle strength was. Sizzle. 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 As the Earth Fiend chi surged out, the heavenly yuan destruction of the 3 supreme elders of the war tribe slowed down as if it had entered a muddy swamp. The destructive power of the heavenly yuan destruction was also weakened by the Earth Fiend chi. No wonder you can dominate the slaughter sea. This made the faces of the 3 supreme elders of the war tribe sink. Of course, although their attacks were blocked, they did not give up. Against true Lord Earth Fiend, who had been famous for many years, they did not think that they would be able to suppress him so easily. Heaven battling art. The three grand elders of the war tribe formed hand seals. Faint red ancient runes appeared all over their bodies, as if they were surrounded by flames. An ancient battle intent surged out as if the war god of the immemorial era had returned to the world. He was immortal and indestructible and wanted to break through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. The battle prowess of the 3 supreme elders of the war clan received an enormous increase. They had reached their limits. After so many years, your war tribe still only knows these little tricks. True Lord Earthfiend was not moved by the war tribe's supreme secret art. He even sneered. Whoosh! He waved his sleeve and ancient and mysterious talismans flew into the sky and merged with the Earthfiend chi. Immediately, the vast earthly ferocious chi condensed into over a dozen lifelike primordial exotic beasts that were several hundred feet tall. There was a 5-colored fire sparrow, a lunar greenbird, a sky-devouring roc, a 3-legged golden crow. Those were the prehistoric beasts that only appeared in myths and legends. Now, they were all formed by true Lord Earthfiend. Not only did they have the form, but they also had the aura as if they had traveled through time and space. Every one of them gave off a murderous aura as if they wanted to kill all living things in the world. Chirp! Qin Yu, who was watching the battle in front of the war tribe's ancestral shrine, was surprised. When true Lord Earthfiend used a secret art to form those ancient beasts, the immemorial era's primordial era's beasts had been formed. The young immortal phoenix that had been sleeping in the ancient seal of the dragon god after leaving the heaven region had awoken and let out a loud cry that split the 9 heavens. This person has the bloodline of the divine phoenix. Qin Yu and the young immortal phoenix were connected and quickly understood. This surprised him. True Lord Earthfiend, who walked the Earth Tao, actually had the bloodline of the divine phoenix. Didn't that mean that this person was a descendant of a divine beast? Go. At this moment, true Lord Earthfiend sneered coldly and pointed at the sky. The 10 ancient beasts immediately spread their wings and flew out. 5-colored flames filled the sky, the power of the moon wreaked havoc, a giant rock covered the sky and a golden crow burned the earth. The 10 ancient beasts did not charge towards the 3 grand elders of the war tribe. Instead, they spread out and went to kill the people of the war tribe. Nangong Baking's order was to destroy the war tribe. True Lord Earthfiend would naturally not be entangled by the 3 grand elders of the war tribe. He would deal with the 3 grand elders after killing the other people of the war tribe. Not good. Young friend, quickly activate the divine array. The 3 supreme elders of the battle tribe were startled as they immediately yelled out. The power of the 10 ancient beasts was comparable to the heavenly ethereal realm. If they were allowed to destroy the people of the war tribe, the people of the war tribe would be destroyed. Although the strength of the people of the war tribe had greatly increased after the bloodline awakening, it was still impossible for them to deal with the combat power of the heavenly ethereal realm. Chapter 781. Buzz. 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 Before the 3 supreme elders of the war tribe could speak, Qin Yu activated the heaven-battling divine array the moment the ancient desolate beasts flew into the sky. With the 4 of them as the boundary, the space seemed to be completely sealed, turning into an independent space. The people inside couldn't leave, and the people outside couldn't enter. This was the new spacetime ability that the dragon soul had comprehended, and Qin Yu had integrated it into the heaven-battling divine array. This way, the heaven-battling divine array could protect the entire war tribe, and it could also isolate true Lord Earthfiend, preventing the shockwaves from their battle from spreading out and affecting the other members of the war tribe. Rumble. The dozen ancient desolate beasts were extremely violent, and after being obstructed, they started to rampage. The terrifying scene of destruction made the faces of the war tribe members outside the sealed space pale, and cold sweat dripped down their backs. If it wasn't for Qin Yu activating the heaven-battling divine array, they would have lost countless people by now. This made them calm down. It seemed that even if the war tribe's bloodline awakened, they still had a long way to go before they could regain their former glory. They couldn't be arrogant just because of this. You're courting death. Seeing that his plan was stopped, true Lord Earthfiend roared. He controlled the dozen ancient desolate beasts and charged towards the 3 supreme elders of the war tribe. As for Qin Yu and the dragon soul, he would deal with them personally. True Lord Earthfiend took out 7 thumb-sized black nails that were engraved with divine runes, and emitted an ancient aura. These were the 7-star god-destroying nails, divine weapons that had been passed down since the ancient times. They were peerless weapons that even the gods of the ancient times were terrified of. It was rumored that once touched by these 7 god-destroying nails, the physical body, 7 spirits, and 3 souls would be separated from the body and sent into a boundless black prison, unable to be reincarnated for eternity until the soul was completely destroyed. True Lord Earthfiend, who had been rolling on the edge of life and death all year round, immediately used his trump card when he sensed that Qin Yu and the dragon soul were in danger. Along the way, he had seen countless failures. Therefore, as long as he sensed the slightest abnormality, he would use his full strength without showing any mercy. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The 7 black ancient spikes tore through the void and fell like 7 meteors. They were extremely fast as they shot toward Qin Yu. At this moment, Qin Yu and the dragon soul felt as if the world had turned upside down and the sun and moon were sinking. It was as if their souls were being forcefully pulled away from their bodies by an invisible force. Of course, this strange feeling only lasted for an instant before it disappeared. It did not cause any injuries to them. As for the 7 7-star god vanquishing nails, they stopped when they were still a few feet away from Qin Yu and Lin Fan. One could clearly see that the space where the 7-star god-destroying nail was rippling like a stone entering water, causing the 7-star god-destroying nail to sink into the void. Space? No, it's the power of space-time. True Lord Earthfiend was indeed a heavenly ethereal realm grand figure who had dominated the slaughter ocean. He immediately saw that Qin Yu and the dragon soul were surrounded by thick space-time power, which affected the entire space and time. This made him very concerned. The space-time power was definitely the most mysterious and troublesome power in the universe. No wonder he could sense danger from Qin Yu and the dragon soul. Seal. When the dragon soul used the space-time power to stop the 7-star god vanquishing nail, Qin Yu pointed his finger. A deep black hole appeared in the void before him and directly swallowed the 7-star god vanquishing nail. How is this possible? True Lord Earthfiend, who was about to use a secret technique to get out of the sofa, was shocked. This was because he had lost the ability to sense the 7-star god vanquishing nail. This made True Lord Earthfiend extremely shocked. The 7-star god vanquishing nail was his natal Dharma treasure. How could Qin Yu erase the natal mark of the 7-star god vanquishing nail in an instant? Whoosh! Qin Yu did not give True Lord Earthfiend time to think. His body flashed and he rushed towards True Lord Earthfiend like a ghost. The chaotic dragon spear was surrounded by steaming chaotic qi. It was like a chaotic ancient demon at the beginning of the universe. With earth-shattering power, the spear stabbed out and the sky exploded. The dragon's soul shook slightly and the void around it rippled. Then, it disappeared. You are digging your own grave. True Lord Earthfiend was furious when he saw that Qin Yu had taken the initiative to attack. Although Qin Yu and the dragon soul were not simple, they were too arrogant to challenge a heavenly ethereal realm grand figure when they were just heavenly ethereal realm grand figures. Therefore, the furious True Lord Earthfiend rushed towards them. When True Lord Earthfiend rushed out, his body burned with raging flames. In an instant, he turned into a man of fire. Even the void was distorted. Vaguely, the shadow of an ancient divine phoenix appeared in the flames on True Lord Earthfiend's body. It was bathed in the divine fire and its power was invincible. The combination of the earthly fiend energy and the divine phoenix flames increased True Lord Earthfiend's cultivation by a few levels. Vaguely, he had reached the complete heavenly ethereal realm. Bloodline awakening. There is such an expert hidden in the war tribe. The heavenly demon old man, who was fighting Zhong Wuqiong, narrowed his eyes when he sensed the power of the godly phoenix. Since True Lord Earthfiend had awakened the power of the fire phoenix bloodline, it meant that he had given it his all. The old man Earthfiend was surprised that there was someone hidden in the war tribe who could force True Lord Earthfiend to give it his all. It was no wonder that Nangong Backing had sent the two of them out. The descendant of the former Void Overlord, Zhong Wuji, was not to be underestimated. What a powerful aura! Zhong Wuqiong also sensed it. His face turned solemn and anxious. With True Lord Earthfiend's terrifying aura, no one in the war tribe could deal with him. Therefore, Zhong Wuji unleashed his ultimate moves to suppress the Old Man Earthfiend as soon as possible. However, the Old Man Earthfiend also wanted to end the battle as soon as possible. He unleashed all kinds of secret skills and techniques, causing the battle to be extremely destructive. Die! Fire Phoenix burns the heavens. True Lord Earthfiend had indeed given it his all. He did not hold back at all. Qin Yu had easily erased the 7-star soul-destroying nail, which made him very wary. As True Lord Earthfiend hollered, the faint image of the fire phoenix within the flames on his body let out a phoenix cry that shook the heavens as it soared into the skies. Wherever the phantom of the fire phoenix passed, a blazing river of flames appeared in the void. It pierced through the heavens, as if even the heavens and earth were being burned. Just in time, Qin Yu saw the world exterminating divine might of that fire phoenix's silhouette. However, he did not fear it in the slightest. True Lord Earthfiend had activated the Fire Phoenix bloodline to kill him. This was a good thing for Qin Yu. Chapter 782. Chirp. Chirp. The baby immortal phoenix in Qin Yu's body chirped happily. The Fire Phoenix bloodline in True Lord Earthfiend's body was purer than the baby immortal phoenix had expected. This made the baby immortal phoenix even happier. Just like Qin Yu and the dragon soul, as long as they refined the dragon bloodline, they would become stronger. As long as the baby immortal phoenix obtained the phoenix bloodline, it would be able to purify its own bloodline and become a supreme immortal beast that could kill immortals. Battle Spirit, appear. Seeing True Lord Earthfiend charging at him with all his strength, Qin Yu didn't let his guard down. Without using the ancestor demon body, he couldn't defeat a heavenly ethereal realm grand cultivator. Therefore, Qin Yu immediately activated the divine array to awaken the ancient spirit of the god of war. However, this time, he didn't just summon it. He added it to his body. Boom! Inside Qin Yu's body, a monstrous and frightening aura suddenly swept out. It was like a sudden clap of thunder, like a vast ocean striking the sky, causing the earth to shake and the mountains to shake. The primal chaos dragon spear pierced through the air, tearing the void apart. With a piercing sound, the Fire Phoenix's shadow was pierced through by the spear. However, the Fire Phoenix shadow wasn't hurt at all. Following that, a phoenix cry resounded through the 9 heavens. The Fire Phoenix illusory figure's entire body burned with terrifying flames. It actually managed to incinerate the primal chaos dragon spear and the primal chaos chi surrounding it. The terrifying aura was enough to burn the sky and destroy the earth. You're overestimating yourself. True Lord Earthfiend, who was secretly on guard against the dragon soul, let out a cold smile when he saw the Chaos Dragon Spear being incinerated. That Fire Phoenix Phantom contained all of his Fire Phoenix bloodline power. Although it wasn't as powerful as the real Fire Phoenix of the primordial divine bird, it was so terrifying that even ordinary divine treasures couldn't resist it. Unless it was a divine treasure that contained the power of an ancient deity. As for the chaotic dragon spear, it was obvious that it was at most equivalent to a pinnacle sacred treasure. The chaotic dragon spear would definitely be burned to ashes in front of the sky-destroying divine flame. Buzz, buzz, buzz. However, at this moment, a soft trembling sound could be heard. Perfected Lord Earthfiend sensed it immediately and his eyes narrowed when he looked over. How could this be? Mysterious, ancient fiery runes began to appear on the Chaos Dragon Spear that had been destroyed by the Chaos Chi. The instant those ancient flame talismans appeared, the Fire Phoenix's silhouette began to tremble involuntarily, as if it had encountered its natural enemy. Fear appeared in those phoenix eyes that were filled with spirituality. With a flap of its huge wings, it was about to fly away. This shocked True Lord Earthfiend. He had never seen such a situation before. Even though the illusory fiery phoenix had its own spirituality, it wasn't a physical entity. Even though it had been annihilated, it could still be revived by the fiery phoenix bloodline in his body. Therefore, even if he encountered a super powerful existence that he was no match for, he had never shown fear. But now, facing a mere heavenly Venerate Jr., he actually wanted to escape. This was completely out of True Lord Earthfiend's expectations. In fact, he couldn't even react in time. Seal. Almost at the instant when the illusory fiery phoenix was about to fly away, Qin Yu suddenly shouted. Billions of divine lights were emitted from his body. Immortal and indestructible supreme fighting spirit soared into the sky. A mysterious and terrifying power surged into the Chaos Dragon Spear. Immediately, the fiery runes that appeared on the Chaos Dragon Spear seemed to have received a huge tonic. They danced in the air and merged into the body of the illusory fiery phoenix. This caused the illusory fiery phoenix to freeze on the spot as if it had been struck by lightning. It even fell from the sky. Those ancient, mysterious flame talismans contained the power of the awakened immortal phoenix. Qin Yu still didn't know the immortal phoenix's natural superpower. However, from the looks of those flame talismans, it was definitely related to the Tao of Fire. In fact, it was highly likely that it was the power of laws that suppressed other Tao of Fire. After all, the Fire Phoenix contained the infinite power of the divine fire. Even so, it was completely vulnerable in front of the immortal phoenix's natural superpower flame talismans. Its entire bloodline was suppressed. This showed how shocking the immortal phoenix's natural superpower was. Die. At that moment, true Lord Earthfiend felt that the power of the bloodline in his body had been sealed. The vast and endless divine power was also flowing away quickly. More than half of his cultivation came from the Fire Phoenix bloodline. If the Fire Phoenix bloodline was sealed, his combat strength would be directly cut in half. The source of all this was Qin Yu. Therefore, true Lord Earthfiend didn't have time to take precautions. The dragon soul that had disappeared was as fast as lightning and it attacked Qin Yu. He threw a punch and there was a dazzling Earthfiend blood radiance. In the Earthfiend blood radiance, there was a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. This punch was called the Earthfiend Blood Sea Fist. It was created by true Lord Earthfiend by combining the supreme Massacre Blood Soul in the Massacre Sea. It was comparable to an ancient divine skill. It was his most powerful trump card after he obtained the Fire Phoenix bloodline. With the help of the boundless Earthfiend Chi, true Lord Earthfiend had once killed a heavenly ethereal realm Archean demonic beast with one punch. It had extremely pure destructive power. Chaos in the void. However, at the moment when true Lord Earthfiend's divine fist that was capable of causing the heavens to collapse was about to reach Qin Yu, the space before Qin Yu suddenly became chaotic. There was a mysterious power of time and space that caused the void to become chaotic. Time and space were greatly affected at this moment. It was as if there was a gap in space. True Lord Earthfiend's killing move was greatly affected. The destructive divine power was continuously weakened by the chaotic void. It was the dragon soul that had escaped into the void. After entering the heavenly venerate realm, the dragon soul had a deeper understanding of the power of time and space. Its power was also more terrifying. Kill. Qin Yu and the dragon soul were connected and he naturally wouldn't miss such a good opportunity. Almost as soon as the void became chaotic, he had already charged out. He had activated the power of the ancient spirit of the god of war to the extreme, causing his flesh and blood to be filled with powerful divine power. Had it not been for Qin Yu's divine dragon tyrannical body, his body would have already been shattered by the overwhelming power of the ancient spirit of the god of war. Boom! Before the Earthfiend True Monarch's shocked eyes, Qin Yu shot out a primal chaos divine fist. It was the chaotic killing art of the chaotic dragon ancestor. However, this killing art had also merged the golden flame heavenly dragon, purple lightning divine dragon, dark demon evil dragon and more importantly, it contained all the divine power of the ancient spirit of the god of war. Poof! With one punch, the terrifying defense around true Lord Earthfiend was shattered. True Lord Earthfiend's body shook violently and he spat out blood. His aura immediately became weak. Even though true Lord Earthfiend had been refining his body with Earthfiend Chi, he still couldn't withstand the destructive divine fist. Although he appeared to have only suffered some light injuries on the surface, his internal organs had been completely pulverized, and even his spirit had been completely destroyed. With one punch, true Lord Earthfiend, a late-stage heavenly ethereal realm expert who was famous in the Shengju Massacre Ocean, had died. Chapter 783. Poof! 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 True Lord Earthfiend was killed by Qin Yu. The dozen or so primordial beasts that were formed by the Earth Fiend Chi immediately turned into Earth Fiend Chi and dissipated. This is, true Lord Earth Fiend is dead. No way. The War Clan's 3 supreme elders, who were fighting against the dozen or so ancient Great Desolate Era ferocious birds, were all startled when they saw those ancient Great Desolate Era ferocious birds collapsing. Soon, they regained their senses and looked in the direction of Qin Yu. When they saw true Lord Earthfiend's lifeless corpse, they couldn't help but reveal intense shock and even respect in their eyes. Even though they knew that Qin Yu had used the heaven-battling divine formation, they were still in awe of his terrifying strength. Even if the 3 of them joined forces, they could not defeat true Lord Earthfiend. However, Qin Yu had managed to kill true Lord Earthfiend with the help of the ancient formation. No matter what method he used, Qin Yu was able to kill an advanced heavenly ethereal realm expert. This meant that Qin Yu's strength was comparable to a complete heavenly ethereal realm expert. How can this be? Above the sky, the old man Tian Sho, who was fighting against John Wuqiong in a frenzied manner, had a horrified expression on his face. He could sense that true Lord Earthfiend had been killed. Although true Lord Earthfiend's cultivation was weaker than his, he was definitely one of the top heavenly ethereal realm experts. He had even fought against a complete heavenly ethereal realm expert. Apart from John Wuqiong, there was such a terrifying existence in the War tribe. This made the old man Tianfiend terrified. The unknown was always the scariest. As the old man Tianfiend could not figure out the strength of the War tribe, the thought of being surrounded by John Wuqiong and the others made him lose his will to fight. He wanted to escape immediately. Trying to escape. John Wuqiong saw through the old man Tianfiend's intention and shouted coldly. He immediately surrounded the old man Tianfiend. Even if John Wuqiong did not know the reason why the old man Tian Sho wanted to leave, he would not allow him to leave so easily. If he couldn't make them pay the price for openly invading the war race, then his ambition to awaken his bloodline and lead the war race back to its glorious peak would be nothing more than a joke. Immediately, John Wuqiong unleashed his mighty fighting power, causing the void to shake violently. The old man Tian Sho's expression turned serious. He did not dare to underestimate his opponent and gave it his all. As the 2 of them fought, their killing intent grew even stronger. More than half of the sky was shaken. A battle of this level had long since attracted the attention of the surrounding experts and large factions. Countless spies were watching from the outside, but no one dared to approach. A battle between experts at the advanced stage of the heavenly ethereal realm was a forbidden area for ordinary cultivators. If they stepped into it, they would definitely die. Chirp. After killing perfected Lord Heavenfiend, Qin Yu did not attack old man Heavenfiend. With a thought, the baby immortal phoenix flew out of the ancient seal of the divine dragon. It circled in the air and suddenly rushed into the sealed fire phoenix shadow. Along with a clear phoenix cry that shook the 9 heavens resounding, the fire phoenix phantom transformed into specks of sparkling and translucent flames that completely merged into the infant immortal phoenix's body. Immediately, the immortal phoenix, which was only the size of a fist, let out countless rays of bright immortal light. It was filled with an ancient immortal aura, as if an ancient immortal spirit had descended to the mortal world. The immortal phoenix spread its wings. Every feather was filled with pure immortal light, causing the immortal phoenix to become transparent under the sunlight. It was extremely beautiful. Its body had obviously grown a few times. Qin Yu could clearly sense that the baby immortal phoenix was undergoing a transformation. The baby immortal phoenix kept crying and its cry shook the 9 heavens. Billions of living beings felt their souls trembling. Although the baby immortal phoenix's cultivation did not become much stronger, its bloodline had been completely reborn. The supreme immortal aura that suppressed all living beings showed the terrifying growth of the baby immortal phoenix. Meanwhile, in a vast ancient world that was unknown how far away from the void zone or even the great spirit world, the eyelids of a person who was sitting on a mountain peak like a corpse suddenly trembled slightly. In the next moment, he opened his eyes. His gaze seemed to contain divine lightning that pierced through the void and caused the heavens to sink. In his ancient eyes, the images of the stars in the sky and the birth and death of billions of universes appeared. Bloodline ancestral awakening. But it's not in the immortal phoenix domain. Could it be that the royal bloodline has wandered outside? It was a skinny old man. His aura was faintly discernible, and he seemed to be about to pass away. At this moment, he stood up. His deep eyes that seemed to be able to see through all living beings in the world looked in a certain direction. He could not hide his excitement. Bloodline ancestral awakening. In the immortal Phoenix clan, there had not been a member of the clan who had undergone ancestral awakening for millions of years. In the history of the immortal Phoenix clan, every time someone with ancestral awakening appeared, they would be able to lead the immortal Phoenix clan back to supreme glory. They could even return to the ancestral land of the immortal Phoenix clan, the Nine Heavens immortal world. The skinny old man waved his right hand, and a huge starry sky map appeared. The skinny old man formed hand seals as if he was using some kind of secret technique. Suddenly, a spot of light lit up on the starry sky map, which made the skinny old man even more excited. The void zone of the Great Spirit World. He put away the starry sky map of the 10 Directions world and waved his hand. A teleportation divine formation formed by thousands of rays of divine light appeared. As the divine light flashed, the skinny old man directly crossed the world barrier and disappeared from this great world. The void zone, the battle tribe. Rumble. The battle between Zhong Wuqiong and the heaven demon old man was getting fiercer and fiercer. The violent explosions that came from the sky were like continuous thunderclaps. Heaven and earth seemed to be faintly torn apart. If it were not for the protection of the heaven battling divine formation, the entire ancestral land of the battle tribe would have been destroyed. After the baby immortal phoenix's bloodline evolved, Qin Yu put it back into the ancient seal of the dragon god. As for the battle between Zhong Wuqiong and the heaven demon old man, Qin Yu did not interfere. If he could not even deal with a heavenly ethereal stage expert, how could Zhong Wuqiong deal with the war god hall? Qin Yu would not stay in the void zone forever. Moreover, once the war god hall learned that the battle tribe's bloodline had evolved, it was easy to imagine what they would do. In the past, the battle tribe had not been destroyed because the war god hall wanted to control them with the evil soul demon formation. However, now that the evil soul demon formation was destroyed and the battle tribe's bloodline had risen, the war god hall would not tolerate the battle tribe anymore. Appear. At this moment, Zhong Wuqiong suddenly shouted in the middle of the white-hot battle in the sky. His voice was like thunder. Immediately, the ancestral land of the battle tribe shook violently. An ancient divine seal that was dozens of meters wide flew into the sky with supreme divine might that could suppress the 9 heavens and 10 earths. The ancient divine seal was engraved with images of countless ancient gods worshipping and immortal spirits preaching Tao. The gods and immortal spirits that were prostrating themselves were so lifelike that it was as if they had real souls. Chapter 784. Heaven Battling Seal. Qin Yu's eyes lit up as he recognized the ancient seal. It was the supreme Tao weapon of the war tribe. It was forged by Zhong Wuji and contained Zhong Wuji's supreme power. However, after Zhong Wuji went missing, the heaven battling seal also disappeared. The outside world had always thought that the heaven battling seal was taken away by Zhong Wuji. No one had expected it to be sealed in the war tribe's ancestral land. Now that the bloodline of the war tribe had been unsealed and they were ready to return to the ranks of the top forces in the void zone, Zhong Wuqiong had also awakened the heaven battling seal. When the heaven battling seal appeared, a boundless Tao aura spread out. Heaven and earth shook and the universe sank. Everyone within 100 million miles felt their souls trembling as if they were facing an ancient deity. Oh no! The old man's face changed drastically when the heaven battling seal appeared. He felt a sense of danger that he had never felt before. He had not felt such a sense of danger for hundreds of years except for the war tribe's leader, Zhong Wuji. It made him want to run away immediately. However, the supreme Tao aura from the heaven battling seal sealed him and he did not dare to act rashly. If he ran away, he would definitely be killed. Even the old man, who had reached the late heavenly ethereal stage, had to use all his strength to deal with such a terrifying Tao weapon. Heaven battling great wheel. Therefore, the heaven demon old man shouted angrily. His hands formed a seal and his body swelled up. In an instant, his body expanded several times and he looked like a small giant. Strange Dao runes appeared on his skin and he gave off a terrifying murderous aura. One could clearly see the heaven-ferocious chi gathering around the heaven-ferocious old man. The heaven-battling aura was extremely dense. It was like a thick fog and waves. It even turned into the colors of yin and yang and turned into a huge heaven-battling yin-yang wheel. The old man was at the center of the wheel. He turned himself into the core of the wheel and drew in the boundless heaven-battling aura. This was the old man's supreme secret technique. It was similar to the boundless heaven-battling aura that true Lord Earthfiend used, but it was more powerful. After all, compared to the earth, the sky was truly boundless. From a certain point of view, such means had already touched upon the power of the natural order of the world. It should be known that only the supreme beings of the heavenly palace realm could sense the power of the rules of heaven and earth. The heaven demon old man was only at the later stage of the heavenly ethereal realm, but he could vaguely touch the rules of heaven and earth. This showed how terrifying his strength was. Of course, this also showed that the old man heaven demon was really going all out. If even this couldn't stop the heaven battling seal, then he wouldn't be able to escape today. Unfortunately, you still haven't mastered the laws of heaven and earth. Zhong Wuqiang snorted coldly. Even he was surprised by the old man Tian Sho's strength. However, in front of the heaven-battling seal, all struggles were futile. This heavenly battle seal was the Dao weapon of the war tribe's old ancestor, Endless War. It had been nurtured by Endless War using the heavenly cycle Dao art for many years. As for Zhong Wuji, at his peak, his cultivation had reached the peak of the heavenly completion realm, which was enough for him to be titled as an emperor. Even in the entire 10 Directions world, they were definitely peak existences that could be counted on one's fingers. If it wasn't for the chaos in the Sky Demon tribe, Endless War's current cultivation would have reached the supreme immortal realm. Therefore, how could the old man Tian Sho, who had touched the power of the rules of heaven and earth with his secret skill, withstand the heaven-battling seal? Go. Zhong Wuqiang didn't do anything else. He just pointed at the old man Tian Sho from afar. Like a breeze, ripples appeared in the void. Before the crowd could see it clearly, the heaven-battling seal appeared in front of the old man Tian Sho. It was so fast that it seemed like it had passed through the void. No one had time to react. Kill. The old man Tian Sho immediately activated the heaven-battling great wheel when Zhong Wuqiang made a move. As the heaven-battling aura filled the air, the heaven-battling great wheel turned into a huge yin-yang vortex. It was deep and mysterious, as if it could devour everything in the universe. Rumble. The heaven-battling seal and the heaven-battling great wheel collided in an instant. An earth-shattering explosion resounded. The entire heavens and earth shook violently, as if the heavens were about to collapse. One could even see huge spatial cracks appearing in the void where the two collided, emitting violent and chaotic spatial ripples. The chaotic spatial power swept out like a tsunami, turning everything within 1,000,000 miles into a chaotic forbidden zone. Many onlookers in the dark couldn't escape in time and were instantly killed. Fortunately, the war tribe's ancestral land was protected by the heaven-battling divine array and the Dragon Soul's spacetime superpower. Crack. Soon, the heaven-battling seal and the heaven-battling great wheel came to an end. The heaven-battling seal's gods and immortal essences shone with dazzling sacred immortal light. The old man Tian Sho gave it his all, and the heaven-battling great wheel shattered. Boom. Then, the heaven-battling great wheel exploded in front of the old man Tian Sho's horrified eyes, turning into countless fragments that scattered in all directions. Poof. 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 The old man Tian Sho was hit by the heaven-battling seal's sacred immortal light, and bloody holes appeared on his body. The sacred immortal light contained endless destructive divine power, and easily shattered the old man Tian Sho's heaven-battling great wheel defense. His soul was annihilated by the immortal light. Now, the heavenly dipper earthly fiend duo, who dominated the slaughter sea and were infamous in the void domain's holy continent, had both died at the hands of the war tribe. It wasn't long before the result of today's battle spread throughout the holy continent, shaking the entire void domain. The war tribe had been silent for hundreds of years. All the forces in the void domain had thought that it would be impossible for them to rise again. However, Who would have thought that the War Clan would use two late heavenly ethereal stage experts as stepping stones to become one of the most powerful forces in the Void Zone? If it had been hundreds of years ago, killing late heavenly void experts wouldn't have been enough for them to rise to the top of the void domain. However, after the turmoil that had happened hundreds of years ago, the number of heavenly palace experts in the void domain had dwindled. No one had even seen a heavenly palace expert for hundreds of years. As for the Heaven Ascension realm, they had already completely vanished without a trace. Therefore, the battle prowess the War Tribe had displayed now was already at the top of the Void Domain. In the entire Void Domain, other than the War God Temple and a few other major forces in the Holy Continent, no other force had such terrifying battle prowess. In the War Tribe's ancestral land. Ever since the old man Tian Sho and true monarch Earthly Fiend were killed, the entire War Tribe had been celebrating. The elders who had awakened their bloodlines all suggested that they attack the War God Temple and take back the War God Temple's former glory. This suggestion was approved by everyone in the War Tribe, including Zhong Wuqiang. Chapter 785. In fact, Zhong Wuqiang had no choice but to attack the War God Hall. After the deaths of the ancient demon Sacred Ground and the fiendish duo, the War God Hall would no longer underestimate them. Instead of waiting for death, they would wait for the War God Hall to be fully prepared before attacking. If they attacked the War God Hall before they reacted, they would have a higher chance of winning. Patriarch, if we want to attack the War God Hall, we have to convince little brother Qin, a heavenly god realm elder of the War Tribe said to Zhong Wuqiang. The trump cards of the Battle Tribe, other than those who had awakened their bloodline, were the Battle Heaven Seal and the Battle Heaven Divine Formation. Currently, Qin Yu was the only one in the War Tribe who could fully unleash the power of the War Heaven Divine Formation. Even Zhong Wuqiang could not do it. Qin Yu had killed the three patriarchs of the ancient demon Sacred Ground and true monarch Earth Fiend with the War God Hall's Divine Formation. With the War Heaven Divine Formation, Qin Yu's battle prowess was comparable to a late Heavenly Void Realm expert or even a peak Heavenly Void Realm expert. If they lost such battle prowess, the War Tribe's strength would be reduced by half. However, the War Tribe was troubled by the fact that Qin Yu was not a member of the War Tribe. Moreover, Qin Yu had risked his life to send Zhong Wuji's inheritance to them so that their bloodline could be unsealed. They could not be thick-skinned and let Qin Yu get involved in the War Tribe's internal strife. I will go to young Master Qin personally. Also, can the War God token be unsealed? Zhong Wuqiang knew that they could not lose Qin Yu. Of course, if Qin Yu did not want to get involved in the danger, they could not force him. However, Zhong Wuqiang was confident that he could convince Qin Yu. The War God token has been unsealed. As for how many of our old subordinates we can summon, it's not clear yet. A supreme elder of the War Tribe said. The War God token was created by Zhong Wuji when he founded the War God Palace and united all the forces in the Void Zone. It could summon all the experts of the War God Palace and was one of the trump cards of the War Tribe. However, after Zhong Wuji went missing, the Battle Tribe's bloodline was sealed, and they lost the civil war against the War God Temple. The War God token fell silent. It was one of Everlasting War's former subordinates who had taken the initiative to sever their connection with the War God token. Therefore, when their bloodlines were unsealed and their talents returned, the Battle Race clansmen unsealed their War God decrees and ordered their former subordinates to attack the War God Temple. However, exactly how many of his old subordinates would still listen to Howlin of the War Clan was still unknown. Open all the teleportation portals and wait for 6 hours. After 6 hours, we will attack the War God Shrine. Zhong Wuqiang ordered. No matter how many old subordinates came, even if none of them came, the war race would still attack on time. Yes. Immediately, the War Clan's upper echelon experts began to make preparations. Firstly, they were going to open the teleportation formation. Secondly, they were going to send away the War Clan's clansmen that did not possess any battle prowess. Only then would they be able to fight the War God Temple to the death without any worries. War race, within the palace. Young Master Qin, after leaving the meeting of the war race, Zhong Wuqiang immediately came to visit Qin Yu. What's the matter? After the battle, Qin Yu had already prepared the teleportation formation. It was time to return to the fire domain. I am here to thank young master for stopping the ancient demon Holy Ground and Heaven Fiend True Immortal and saving the lives of my clansmen. Zhong Wuqiang did not beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Secondly, I hope that young master can help the war race. We want to kill the war god temple and take back the glory of our race. Qin Yu raised his eyebrows. Although he admired Zhong Wuji, he had also obtained the ancestral demon body because of the yin-yang supreme god. However, he had already done what Zhong Wuji had asked him to do. As for the internal grudges of the war race, Qin Yu did not want to get involved. No force could be passed down forever. If the war god temple was the enemy of the war race today, there would be other strong enemies to deal with tomorrow. Of course, we will not let young master do it for free. I heard that young master is interested in the dragon race. Zhong Wuqiang immediately understood Qin Yu's thoughts when he saw Qin Yu's expression. You know where the dragon race is? Qin Yu and the dragon soul were shocked. They were in a hurry to return to the fire domain because of the inheritance of the fire emperor and the fire dragon race in the fire god palace. If Zhong Wuqiang knew where the dragon race was, the trip to the fire domain could be postponed. I don't know where the dragon race is, but I saw the dragon's tomb in the land of the fallen gods. This was why Zhong Wuqiang was confident that he could persuade Qin Yu. Dragon's tomb? Land of the fallen gods? Qin Yu had a detailed understanding of the dragon's tomb while he was in the war race. It was said that the mysterious dragon's tomb was a mysterious space created by the eternal dragon lord of the Dragonfield before the Dragonfield was destroyed. It housed billions of dragon guards. It was said that as long as one was recognized by the dragon's tomb, one would receive the eternal dragon lord's inheritance and inherit the billions of dragon guards. Of course, although the dragon's tomb appeared in the void zone from time to time, no one had confirmed the existence of the eternal dragon lord's inheritance. To be more precise, no one had even entered the dragon's tomb. If you are willing to help, I will personally take you to the land of the fallen gods. Of course, even if you are unwilling, I will tell you where it is. Zhong Wuqiang did not force him and said sincerely, let's go and have a look. The dragon soul looked at Zhong Wuqiang and sent a message to Qin Yu. Alright, after this battle, we will go to the land of the fallen gods. Qin Yu agreed after thinking for a while. Strictly speaking, he was involved in the internal strife between the war race and the war god hall. He had killed the ancient demon Sacred Ground and true Lord Earthfiend. If the war god hall received the news, they would not sit by and do nothing. If the war god hall suppressed the war god hall, the war god hall would try to stop him when the dragon's tomb appeared. In that case, he might as well work harder and destroy the war god hall. Zhong Wuqiang was overjoyed. He immediately brought Qin Yu to the war race's ancestral land and used a supreme secret technique to detain the heaven-battling divine formation. At this moment, the war race's powerless clansmen were all sent away. Only the elite experts stayed behind to prepare. At this moment, the war god hall was tens of thousands of miles away. The atmosphere was heavy and oppressive. The upper echelons of the war god hall were gathered. Hallmaster, the old man Tiansha and true Lord Earthfiend were really killed by the war race? A middle heavenly ethereal realm core elder asked in disbelief. The other elders who had gathered could not believe it and were shocked. When they heard the news, they could not believe it. After all, the old man Tiansha and true Lord Earthfiend were both at the late heavenly ethereal realm and had powerful trump cards. They could even fight a complete heavenly ethereal realm expert. Even if they could not defeat them, they should be able to escape. They should not have been killed. Chapter 786. The old man Tiansha was killed by Zhong Wuqiang using the Battle Heaven Seal. Countless forces in the Shengju witnessed that scene. As for true Lord Earthfiend, he was killed by the Battle Heaven Divine Formation, just like the ancient demon Sacred Ground. As for the person controlling the Battle Heaven Divine Formation, we still haven't found out who he is. Nangong Backing, who was sitting on the throne, did not speak. Instead, his trusted elder spoke. As he spoke, he pointed his finger and specks of light appeared and turned into screens. The screens showed the scene of the Battle Heaven Seal crushing the Tiansha Great Wheel. One could clearly see that the old man Tiansha was killed along with the Tiansha Great Wheel. When the core elders of the War God Hall saw this, shock and horror appeared on their faces. Although some of them were confident that their battle strength was not weaker than the old man Tiansha, there was a limit to it. Even the old man Tiansha had lost his life to the heaven battling seal. How could they survive against it? The atmosphere in the palace became heavier. Hallmaster, I know that you've been merciful to the war tribe because of your teacher, but I'm afraid that just suppressing them won't do. We have to be ruthless. A core elder of the War God Hall suggested in a deep voice. Most of the core elders of the War God Hall were related to the war tribe. Nangong Baking did not personally deal with the war tribe because he was worried. But now that the war tribe had displayed the peak battle strength of a peak force, the War God Hall would definitely nurture a super strong enemy if they allowed the War God Hall to develop. If the war tribe had the chance, they would not be merciful to the War God Hall. Hallmaster, I think that Elder Yu's words are reasonable. Indeed. Although Tiangang Di Sha and Tiangang Di Sha are the secret weapons of the War God Hall, the upper echelons of the War God Hall know about it. If we let this matter go, it will be disappointing. Blood must be repaid with blood. The other core elders of the War God Hall chimed in. Even the core elders that were related to the war clan had a change in expression. Although they did not say anything, they all looked at the white-robed elder on the right side of the palace. 12th junior brother, what do you think? When Nangong Baking heard the suggestions of the core elders, his eyelids lifted slightly as his deep eyes looked towards the white-robed elder. This white-robed old man was called Jiyu Wudi. He was also Zhon Wuji's disciple and the current vice hall master of the War God Hall. Jiyu Wudi was silent for a long time, then bitterly asked, "Is there no way to reverse the situation?" Previously, in order to protect Zhon Wuji's reputation, Nangong Baking had asked him to rebuild his orthodoxy and establish the Divine Battle Hall. After all, at that time, the war clan no longer had the strength to command the War God Palace. If this were to continue, the war clan would sooner or later be replaced by others. In the past few years, the core elders of the War God Temple who had entered the War God Temple would occasionally speak up, saying that they wanted to completely wipe out the war race to prevent future troubles. But Jiyu Wudi suppressed them all. He had only agreed to work with Nangong Baking because he wanted to protect Everlasting War's reputation. He still couldn't bring himself to kill his master's descendant. However, who would have thought that after the war clan fell into silence for so many years, they would actually rise up again? According to the news, the war clan has already unsealed the War God Command and is beginning to summon their old subordinates. Nangong Baking slowly spoke. Jiyu Wudi's expression changed. Since the war clan had unsealed the War God Command and begun to summon their old subordinates, their intentions were self-evident. The war clan was already prepared to attack and take back the glory that belonged to them. In other words, the war clan was already prepared to gamble everything. This matter was no longer something that could be stopped just because they wanted to. Junior brother, now that things have come to this, you should also make a decision. In the battle back then, countless core members of the war clan died. Although you didn't kill them, you chose to watch from the sidelines. Now that the war clan has risen up, do you think that they will forget about their blood feud just because of their old friendship? Nangong Baking said in a low voice. Although the War God Temple was definitely stronger than the war clan in terms of overall strength, if the war clan were to summon their old subordinates, the result would be different. Thus, at this time, in the entire War God Temple, Jiyu Wudi, whose battle strength was second only to his own, was extremely important. If Jiyu Wudi still didn't do anything at this critical moment, or if he decided to betray them, they would be in great trouble. Senior brother, don't worry. I know what to do. Jiyu Wudi slowly nodded his head. Since he had made his choice back then, he wouldn't make another choice now. Otherwise, whether it was the War God Temple or the war clan, there would be no place for him. Nangong Baking nodded his head slightly. With him and Jiyu Wudi here, even if the war clan was hiding their strength, he had nothing to fear. Temple Master, could it be that the war clan is gathering their old subordinates to invade? Seeing that Nangong Baking and Jiyu Wudi had finished talking, a core elder asked. The other core elders also looked over. Although they didn't know much about the War God token, they had heard about it. In Zhon Wuji's era, every time the War God token was activated, It meant that the war god palace would start a war. Regardless of whether it was to fight against invading foreign forces or to attack other martial domains. That's right. This is also the reason why I've gathered everyone here today. According to a secret report, the war clan has already evacuated all of their people and gathered their elite forces. Nangong Backing nodded his head. Haha, they're really overestimating themselves. Do they think that by eliminating the ancient demon's sacred land and Tiangang Disha, they'll be able to resist the war god temple? Since they've taken the initiative to invade, even if the temple master and vice-temple master fight them, the clans of the Void Zone won't have the right to say anything. That's right. The temple master and vice-temple master have already done everything they can. Since they don't know what's good for them, they can't blame us. That's how it should be. In the martial world, the strong are respected. Bloodlines can't protect the reputation of our ancestors. Hearing this, the war god temple's elders all laughed coldly, their killing intent solemn. Although the war clan's battle prowess had shocked and even frightened them, that was under the condition that Nangong Backing and Jiyu Wudi didn't take action. If Nangong Backing and Jiyu Wudi took action, they wouldn't have the slightest bit of pressure. In the current Void Zone, apart from those Heaven Palace realm old monsters who had been living in seclusion, Nangong Backing and Jiyu Wudi's battle prowess was definitely the strongest. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been so many people following the war god palace during its internal strife. To put it bluntly, in this world, the strong were respected. Since we're all in agreement, pass down the order to prepare for battle. We'll end all future troubles with this battle, Nangong Backing said solemnly as his dignified gaze swept across everyone from the war god temple. This battle would determine the future of the war god temple. They could only win, not lose. Yes. Immediately, all of the war god temple's experts received the order and went to prepare. As the war god temple and the war god temple moved, the forces of the entire Shengju felt a terrifying pressure, as if a storm was coming. The forces of the entire Void Zone were waiting quietly. This civil war that had lasted for hundreds of years would most likely end soon. Chapter 787. Battle Tribe, Ancestral Land. Buzz, buzz, buzz. As the void shook, ancient and mysterious inscriptions appeared and formed an ancient teleportation array. The expression of the battle race expert guarding the teleportation array shook. Did the old members of the Battle God Palace respond to the Battle God order and gather here? As expected, as the teleportation formation lit up, a plump figure appeared out of thin air. It was a fat man who was holding a wine jug. He was dressed sloppily and reeked of alcohol. If one looked at his clothes, they would think he was a beggar. Wine Marquis. However, when the fat man appeared, the battle tribe elite was pleasantly surprised. Wine Marquis Xian Danyang was a famous elite of the Battle God Palace in the past. His cultivation had reached the late stage of the heavenly ethereal realm. During the civil war a few hundred years ago, he had displayed extraordinary strength. Where is Zhong Wuqiang? Why isn't he here? He sent you juniors to guard here. Is he looking down on us? Or is he not in charge of the battle tribe now? Xian Danyang looked at the high-level powerhouses of the battle race that welcomed him. His drunken eyes flashed with a dazzling light. Obviously, he had confirmed that the rumors were true and that the bloodline of the battle tribe had been unsealed. Many thoughts flashed through Xian Danyang's mind. Ever since Zhong Wuji, the master of the Battle God Palace, had disappeared, the bloodline of the battle tribe had been sealed. Now, the bloodline of the battle tribe had been unsealed and they had risen. This naturally made Xian Danyang think of Zhong Wuji. When the battle tribe was at its peak, Xian Danyang was only a mid-tier elite in the Battle God Palace. He wasn't even qualified to meet Zhong Wuji. However, the times were different now. The heavenly ethereal realm had become a legend. The old monsters of the heavenly palace realm had hidden themselves and the heavenly ethereal realm had become the top fighting force. Even if Zhong Wuji came out, he would definitely look at Xian Danyang differently. Senior Wine Marquis, the clan leader has prepared a banquet in the sacred palace. Senior, please go. The elite of the battle tribe immediately led Xian Danyang to the sacred palace. Xian Danyang's eyes flashed. From the way the elite of the battle tribe addressed him, He could tell that Zhong Wuqiong was still the clan leader of the battle tribe. In that case, could it be that he had guessed wrongly? Everlasting war had not returned. However, if it wasn't for Zhong Wuji, how could the war tribe have the resources to destroy the Heavenly Dipper Earthly Fiend and Heavenly Dipper Earthly Fiend that had dominated the Slaughter Sea for hundreds of years? After all, even Xian Danyang, who was rather confident in his own strength, was not confident that he could deal with Old Man Tiangang and true Lord Earthfiend. Soon, Xian Danyang arrived at the war tribe's holy temple. The upper echelon elders of the war clan were all gathered in the sacred palace. Zhong Wuqiong sat on the main seat. However, a young man sat on his left and he wasn't one of the 3 supreme elders of the war tribe. This scene surprised Xian Danyang. He couldn't help but carefully size up Qin Yu. But no matter how he looked, Qin Yu's cultivation was only at the Empyrean realm. Xian Danyang could kill him with a single palm strike. How could Zhong Wuqiong allow him to sit there? One had to know that the war clan had always respected the strong. As for the order of their positions, they also had a precise plan. Without sufficient strength, no matter how high one's status was, one wouldn't be qualified to sit on it. Senior Ju Hu, long time no see. Zhong Wuqiong, who had already received the news, immediately stood up and greeted Xian Danyang with a smile. Xian Danyang was much older than Zhong Wuqiong's father. In front of Xian Danyang, Zhong Wuqiong was just a junior. With the recovery of your bloodline, you have reached the heavenly Empyrean realm. Zhong Wuqiong, you are indeed the most outstanding genius among the younger generation. Your talent is amazing. Xian Danyang looked deeply at Zhong Wuqiong and his eyes were filled with shock. Although Zhong Wuqiong had restrained his aura, in Xian Danyang's eyes, his blood qi was unfathomable. Such a terrifying aura was no weaker than Xian Danyang's. In fact, Xian Danyang was even stronger. Senior Ju, who has also reached the advanced heavenly Empyrean realm. You are already one of the top experts in Shengju. Zhong Wuqiong smiled. In the past, Zhong Wuqiong would have to bow to Ju Hu and Xian Danyang. But now, although Zhong Wuqiong's attitude was warm, he treated Ju Hu as an equal. There was no seniority in the martial path, the strong were respected. Since we are both at the late heavenly Empyrean realm, you don't have to call me senior. Just call me by my name. Xian Danyang reacted quickly and adjusted his position. Since that's the case, I will accept your invitation. Zhong Wuqiong nodded and invited Xian Danyang to sit. I wonder if the release of the Divine Order and the gathering of the old members is for the War God Palace. Xian Danyang sat on the empty seat on the right. The seat on the right was specially prepared for the old members of the War God Palace. However, so far, only Xian Danyang had come. That's right. In the past, Nangong Backing betrayed his teacher and ancestors and fought for power. He expelled the War God Palace to this remote ancestral land and tried to destroy the War God Palace. Now that the bloodline of the battle tribe has returned, it's time to reclaim the past glory of our tribe, restore the name of the divine battle palace, and display the might of our ancestors. Therefore, we've gathered our seniors to lend us a hand. Seeing that Xian Danyang went straight to the point, Zhong Wuqiong nodded solemnly and said, Although I have lived in seclusion for the past few years, I know that the War God Palace has become the overlord of the Shengju continent after it was established. During this period, it has destroyed more than 10 overlord forces. From this, we can see that the War God Palace is not as simple as it seems. Currently, the War God Palace has less than 10 heavenly Empyrean realm experts, right? Xian Danyang's eyes flickered. Among the old members of the War God Palace, other than those who had died in the internal strife, he was the only one who had come today. Looking at the top heavenly Empyrean realm experts in the War God Palace, other than Zhong Wuqiong, there were only 3 Grand Elders. Even if the War God Palace had some hidden strength, it would be limited. How dare they challenge the War God Palace with such a small force? Where did the War God Palace's confidence come from? Could it be that the War God Palace's ancestor had returned? Since we dared to attack the War God Hall, we naturally made preparations. If Wine Marquis is willing to lend my war clan a hand, we will naturally be endlessly grateful. If you are unwilling, we will have no complaints at all. Zhong Wuqiong said with a smile. However, He did not reveal the War God Palace's trump card. After all, no one knew if Wine Marquis was related to the War God Palace. Why would Zhong Wuqiang reveal his trump card at this moment? Xian Danyang smiled when he heard this. He did not leave, nor did he say anything. It was obvious that he wanted to see if he should get involved in this matter. Zhong Wuqiang did not mind and arranged the people of the War God Palace in an orderly manner. As time passed, the old members of the War God Palace gathered. There were more than 30 of them. The weakest was a half-step Heavenly Empyrean Realm expert and the strongest was comparable to Xian Danyang. Chapter 788. Over 30 Heavenly Ethereal Realm cultivators. If the War Tribe led them, they would be able to fight against the War Divine Temple. However, apart from a few loyal members of the War Tribe, the rest of the old subordinates had the same attitude as Xian Danyang. They were all watching from the sidelines. They wanted to see what kind of trump cards the War Clan had first. If they could defeat the War Divine Temple and Nangong backing, they wouldn't mind helping. However, if the War Tribe couldn't defeat them, they knew what to do. They didn't want to end up like those old subordinates who had followed the war race wholeheartedly hundreds of years ago and lost their lives in the internal strife. In fact, if the war race were to lose this time around, the War God badge would be lost as well. Among them, there would definitely be many who would choose to join the War God Temple. A good bird chooses a good tree to nest in. In the world of Xiuzhi, it was very important to attach oneself to a strong faction and have an extraordinary backer. This was also the reason why Zhong Wuji had created the War God Palace with his own strength and attracted countless experts to follow him. Zhong Wuqiang didn't care about Xian Danyang's thoughts. Of course, he wouldn't waste his breath on the other old subordinates. As long as their war clan displayed sufficient strength, these old experts would naturally join and follow them. It seems like the War Tribe won't be able to defeat the War Divine Temple if they don't have a backup plan. The Dragon Soul's voice sounded from Qin Yu's body. Although they hadn't lived as long as these old foxes, they had lived for more than 100 years. They could be considered scheming people. They could see that the experts gathered in the War God Palace all had ulterior motives. In the Dragon Soul's opinion, it was better not to be anxious. If someone betrayed them at the crucial moment, it would be a bad thing. A backup plan? Qin Yu's eyes lit up when he heard this. He had stayed in the War Tribe for some time. If the War Tribe had a backup plan, it would be the War Heaven Seal. He had seen the War Heaven Seal kill the late Heavenly Ethereal Realm Old Man Tian Shuo with one seal. However, from what he sensed that day, the War God Seal hadn't fully unleashed its power. In other words, the War Heaven Seal hid a stronger power that couldn't be underestimated. However, Qin Yu did not mind. His agreement with Zhong Wuqiang was to help the War Tribe deal with one of Zhong Wuji's disciples, who was at the peak of the Heavenly Ethereal Realm. With Qin Yu's current strength and the control of the Heaven Battling Divine Formation, it was really not difficult to deal with a perfect Heavenly Ethereal stage. Therefore, even if the War Tribe was in chaos and could not defeat the War God Temple, Qin Yu did not need to worry about his own safety. Of course, Zhong Wuqiang and the others from the Battle Tribe were not stupid. If they were not strong enough, they would have chosen to retreat and recuperate instead of declaring war at this moment. It was likely that the old subordinates that were gathered here today all had the same thought, which was why they wanted to come and take a look. After all, the grudges between the War God Temple and the War Clan had lasted for several hundred years. It was time for them to settle this grudge. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. The sky had just brightened. In the ancestral land of the War Clan, figures with terrifying auras disappeared from the transmission array. Thousands of miles away in the center of the Shengju continent, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth swirled around the War God Temple. The scenery was dreamy and beautiful. An enormous, ancient transmission array appeared, and one figure after another appeared in the air. The War Tribe has indeed launched an attack. Zhong Wuqiang, the leader of the War Tribe, the 3 Grand Elders of the War Tribe, Wine Marquis Xian Danyang, the bloodthirsty War General Long Bashi, the Yin-Yang Divine Master Qi Wentian. No wonder the War Tribe is so confident to attack the War God Temple. I thought it was just a rumor that the War Tribe had unsealed the War God token and gathered their old subordinates. I didn't expect it to be true. That's strange. Wine Marquis and the others are not stupid. They wouldn't follow the war tribe to attack the war god temple. What happened? It's said that the cultivation of everyone in the war tribe skyrocketed overnight. If such a strange thing is true, there's only one possibility. Could it be that legendary existence has returned? No way. That person has disappeared for several hundred years. Countless powerful forces from the Void Domain's holy continents had already gathered in the War God Temple's territory. Ever since the news about the War Tribe and the War God Temple had spread, all the major forces in the Void Domain had been secretly paying attention to the movements of the two great forces. Now that the War Tribe had finally made a move, it meant that the rumors that had been spreading in the outside world were true. A world-shaking battle was about to break out between the War God Temple and the War God Temple. Nangong backing, is this how you greet an old friend? Zhong Wuqiong appeared in front of the crowd and spoke calmly. However, his voice was like thunder that rumbled and spread in all directions. Rumble. As soon as Zhong Wuqiong finished speaking, the multicolored light that enveloped the entire War God Temple slowly disappeared. It was replaced by a series of soul-stirring sounds of war drums, as if thousands of armies were going on a campaign, filling the ancient times with boundless killing intent. As the light disappeared, the experts of the War God Temple, who had been fully prepared, appeared in front of the crowd. Compared to the War Tribe, which only had a few hundred people, the War God Temple had thousands of people. They were lined up neatly, wearing armor and holding spears in their hands. When the two sides were compared, it gave the crowd a strong sense of superiority. Zhong Wuqiong, long time no see. A deep voice rang out. The War God Temple Master, Nangong Backing, appeared in front of the army with the higher-ups of the War God Temple. Oh my God, there are 20 heavenly ethereal realm expert. The strength of the War God Temple is too terrifying. Indeed, if it weren't for the old members of the War Tribe, Zhong Wuqiong and the others would have been easily crushed. I wonder who will emerge victorious in the battle between the two of them. The spectating experts from the various large factions were greatly astonished when they saw the strength of the War God Hall. They knew that the War God Temple had an extraordinary strength. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to dominate the Shungju continent for so many years. However, they didn't expect the War God Temple to have so many heavenly ethereal realm experts. Although they were outsiders, they could see that the heavenly ethereal realm experts were the main forces in today's battle. They were the main factors that could lead the battle. The heavenly gods could only be used as support. Hey, it's him. After Nangong Backing appeared, Qin Yu's figure was reflected in his deep starry sky-like eyes. That was because among all the people in the war clan, only Qin Yu was a complete stranger. They had never seen him before. This made Nangong Backing immediately think of the news that the war tribe had spread. It was said that the fall of the ancient demon sacred ground and the earth fiend true lord was related to the mysterious Qin Yu. From the position that Qin Yu was standing beside Zhong Wuqiong, it was obvious. Qin Yu's position in the war tribe was higher than Wine Marquis Xian Danyang, Yin Yang Divine Master Qi Wentian and the other late heavenly ethereal realm experts. This meant that Qin Yu was more important than Xian Danyang and the others in the eyes of Zhong Wuqiong and the others. However, the question was, where did Qin Yu come from? Someone who could kill the Earth Fiend True Lord shouldn't be unknown in the Void Zone. Could it be that he was a disciple of one of those reclusive old monsters? Judging from Qin Yu's appearance, this was very likely. Although a cultivator's lifespan would be greatly extended after reaching the 9th level of the Heavenly Tao, their appearance would gradually change with the passage of time. Unless they cultivated some special secret technique or used some secret technique to become younger. It's time to settle the old grudge today. Looking at Nangong Backing, Jiyu Wudi and the others, Zhong Wuqiong's eyes were filled with bone-chilling killing intent. In the past few years, the war tribe had been in danger of being destroyed at any time. Many of their clansmen had disappeared or died. And the source of all this was Nangong Backing. Moreover, the internal strife back then was caused by Nangong Backing, who was supposed to support the war tribe, establishing another faction and splitting the war god palace. Now that they had met, Zhong Wuqiong couldn't wait to tear Nangong Backing into pieces and burn his bones to ashes. If you really want to settle the score, then your war tribe should be thanking us. Back then, if my junior brother and I hadn't established the War God Palace, who in the vast void zone would still remember Master's great achievements? Nangong Backing chuckled, not caring at all about Zhong Wuqiong's killing intent. That's right. Our war clan should indeed properly thank you all. Thus, today, we will use your lives to repay you all for massacring our war clan back then. Zhong Wuqiong's eyes twitched, his killing intent skyrocketed, like an ancient beast that was about to slaughter the world. The core elders of the war tribe were also filled with killing intent, their eyes bloodshot. They had all experienced the massacre back then. Now that they heard Nangong Backing's shameless words, they were so angry that their lungs were about to explode. Zhong Wuqiong, if it weren't for the benevolence of our war god palace and sparing your lives, we would have wiped you out long ago. I didn't expect that not only do you not know how to repay our kindness, but you also want to attack us. You're really ungrateful. If I knew this would happen, I would have killed you all back then. A heavenly ethereal stage core elder of the war god palace said coldly. The other core elders also had disdainful expressions. They didn't put the war tribe in their eyes at all. As for the reason, it was quite simple. Although the War God Palace had more heavenly ethereal stage experts among the old members of the War God Palace. However, according to the spies they had planted in the War Tribe, the old members weren't on the same side as the War Tribe. As long as they were able to completely defeat the War Clan, those old experts would naturally disperse. It was no longer the same as it was a few hundred years ago. Not many of the old members would still be loyal to the War Tribe. So, I said that I will use your heads as a blood sacrifice to the deceased members of the War Tribe. Zhong Wuqiong suddenly pulled out his sword and roared, "Kill!" Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Immediately, the dozens of War Tribe experts were filled with killing intent as they charged towards Nangong Backing and the others. Violent killing intent surged and tore apart the clouds, shaking the earth. It was a soul-stirring sight. As for the old members of the War Tribe, it wasn't out of the War God Palace's expectations. Apart from a few people who were still loyal to the War Tribe, the others, such as Xian Danyang and Qi Wentian, chose to stand to the side. This was because Zhong Wuqiong hadn't shown the War Tribe's strength yet. It seemed that he had come to attack the War God Palace with his anger and killing intent. What are the old members of the War Tribe trying to do? Could it be that they want to betray the War God Palace and watch the tigers fight? It can't be. Won't the War Tribe be harmed by them? Haha, could it be that those people have been bribed by the War God Palace? The large factions that were watching from afar were stunned when they saw the old members of the War Tribe. Then, a heated discussion broke out. The situation before them was completely different from what they had expected. Without the help of the old members, why would the War Tribe come to attack the War God Palace? In fact, with the difference in strength between the two sides, it wasn't a battle at all. It was more like a suicide mission. As expected, Jiyu Wudi sighed inwardly when he saw this. During the internal strife, those who supported the War Tribe were punished by the War God Palace. Countless people had died because of it. With a bloody precedent, Xian Danyang and the other old members of the War Tribe didn't dare to join the War God Palace. If they chose the wrong side, they would have to face the War God Palace's revenge. Although their overall strength wasn't weaker than the War God Palace's upper echelons, they weren't united. In other words, they were scattered. With enough time, the War God Palace would be able to eliminate them one by one. From today onwards, the War God Palace will be the only War God Palace in the Void Zone. Kill! Nangong Backing roared as he took the initiative to charge towards Zhong Wuqiong. If Zhong Wuqiong and the others had split up and waited for an opportunity after their bloodline recovered, it would be troublesome for the War God Palace. However, Zhong Wuqiong leading his people to attack was exactly what Nangong Backing wanted. As long as they could kill Zhong Wuqiong and the others, the War God Palace would have no more problems. Moreover, they could use this battle to recruit the old members of the War Tribe and deter the other forces in the Void Zone, helping the War God Palace to unify the Void Zone. Kill! The other core elders of the War God Palace couldn't wait any longer. Almost as soon as Nangong Backing gave the order, they charged out with murderous intent. Jiyu Wudi and the other core elders who used to be related to the War Tribe didn't just stand by and watch. They charged out madly. Activate the Saint formation. Today, not a single person from the war clan will be able to leave this place alive. As for the heaven gods of the Battle God Hall, they had merged their cultivation into one and poured it into the battle formation to strengthen it. They were assisting the experts of the Battle God Hall from afar. With my battle intent, ignite my divine blood and awaken my battle spirit. Just as the two armies were about to collide, Zhong Wuqiang suddenly shouted. Divine light shone from his hand and a vast divine aura swept out in all directions. Rumble. An ancient seal glowing with divine light suddenly appeared. It was as if an ancient god had descended. All the living creatures within a radius of 10 million miles felt an intense pressure that caused their hearts to palpitate. It was the War Sky Seal. However, compared to when it had killed the old man Tian Shuo, the War Sky Seal now seemed to have unlocked some kind of seal. Divine shadows with vast divine aura appeared on it. A mysterious and ancient Tao sound was heard, as if the ancient saints were worshipping it. It was extremely mysterious. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, in the next instant, a shocking scene appeared. As the ancient runes on the heaven battling imprint emitted a bright light, those ancient and mysterious divine figures actually walked out of the heaven battling imprint. Each of them was majestic and gave off an immortal aura. Some of them held divine swords and their sword intent shook the 9 heavens. Some of them carried long spears and their spear light swept through the clouds. Some of them held sabers and their saber chi tore through the sky. There were more than 10 of those god shadows and each of them was no weaker than a late heavenly ethereal realm expert. 2 of them even had terrifying auras that were comparable to a great void realm expert. When the 10 god shadows appeared, the killing intent of the war tribe and the war god palace was suppressed and dispersed. There was only boundless divine aura that swept across the entire area. It was extremely terrifying. What is that? What a terrifying divine aura. Are they not ancient gods? How can there be so many ancient gods? This must be some kind of supreme secret technique of the war tribe, right? I remember now. The war tribe seems to have an ancient secret technique called the war spiritual technique. It seems to be able to cultivate a powerful war spirit. That's right. I heard that the war tribe's old ancestor had killed a few true god remnant spirits. It seems like those suppressed god remnant spirits have been sealed in the War Sky Seal. The spectators who had thought that the people of the war tribe were here to die were all shocked. The auras of the 10 war spirits were too terrifying. Even the late heavenly ethereal realm experts of the War God Palace were no match for them. They could not help but be amazed. No wonder the war tribe was a supreme force that had once ruled the Void Zone. Its foundation was indeed terrifying. Is this Zhong Wuqiang's trump card? Xian Danyang and the other old members of the war tribe were all moved when they saw this scene. With such a trump card, the war tribe did not need to rely on their strength to fight against the War God Palace. If they joined the battle, they could directly take the lead and even change the situation. Xian Danyang and the others looked at each other and seemed to have made their choice. What a terrifying aura. War spirits of the past. Didn't these battle spirits disappear along with Zhong Wuji? Oh no, hurry up and defend. However, the faces of the people of the War God Palace changed drastically. They did not expect the war tribe to have such a trump card. Even Nangong Backing and Jiyu Wudi's faces darkened. Boom boom boom. However, at this moment, they had no place to retreat. They could only use their full strength to defend against the 10 ancient war spirits. Immediately, earth-shattering explosions rang out. Violent yuan qi surged like a sea of chaotic yuan qi. The sky and the earth shook violently as if they were about to collapse. Whether it was the old members of the war tribe or the other forces that were watching from afar, they were all affected. They had to take action to defend against the chaotic shockwaves. Poochie. As soon as the two sides clashed, there were casualties. The War God Palace had more heavenly ethereal realm experts than the war tribe. However, the battle strength of the 10 ancient war spirits was too terrifying. Even an ordinary late heavenly ethereal realm expert would find it difficult to resist. As soon as they clashed, 2 early heavenly ethereal realm experts were killed by the ancient war spirits. Their souls were scattered and their bodies were destroyed. The people of the War God Palace felt as if they had been hit in the head and their fighting spirit was shaken. Although the ones who died were only early heavenly ethereal realm experts, it was still a great loss to the War God Palace. More importantly, the battle had just begun and there were already casualties. This made the people of the War God Palace, who were originally full of confidence, panic. If they were unable to deal with the 10 ancient battle spirits, even if their War God Hall was able to annihilate the entire war tribe, they would definitely suffer heavy casualties, and might even suffer serious injuries. If that happened, the other forces in the Shungju continent would definitely take advantage of the situation. 12th junior brother, follow me to kill Zhong Wuqiong. The rest of you, use the power of the Saint Array to resist the 10 ancient war spirits. Remember, do not fight to the death. Do not fight. Nangong Baking's face was extremely ugly. However, he was also a decisive person. He immediately thought of a countermeasure and quickly gave out the order. As he gave out the order, vast heavenly yuan surged out from his body and swept towards Zhong Wuqiong like a tidal wave. He could tell that the 10 ancient war spirits were summoned by Zhong Wuqiong after the seal on the war sky seal was broken. In other words, as long as they killed Zhong Wuqiong, the war sky seal would be resealed and the 10 ancient war spirits would naturally disappear. Swoosh. However, just as Jiyu Wudi was about to use a secret technique to evade the attacks of the 10 ancient battle spirits, a figure appeared like a ghost and intercepted Jiyu Wudi. It's you. Jiyu Wudi raised his eyebrows. The person who intercepted him was Qin Yu. Although the War God Palace had planted spies in the war tribe, they did not know Qin Yu's background and strength. The only thing they knew was that Qin Yu had used the power of the War Sky Divine Array to kill the 3 ancestors of the ancient demon Sacred Ground and perfected Lord Earthfiend. In other words, Qin Yu's battle strength aside, with the help of the War Sky Divine Array, his battle strength could kill an advanced heavenly ethereal realm expert. Array, rise. Qin Yu did not waste any time. The moment he appeared, he immediately set up the War Sky Divine Array and enveloped Jiyu Wudi. This prevented him from joining forces with Nangong Baking. Do you think that you can stop me with this divine array? Jiyu Wudi narrowed his eyes and quietly sized up Qin Yu. He felt a little strange. He had already seen through Qin Yu's cultivation level. It was only at the heavenly venerate realm. With such a weak cultivation level, could he really use the War Sky Divine Array to kill an advanced heavenly ethereal realm expert? Whether I can stop you or not, I'll have to try. Qin Yu smiled faintly. Since Jiyu Wudi was trapped by him, it would be difficult for him to escape. At the very least, he would not be able to escape in a short period of time unless he could defeat him. However, with the War Sky Divine Array, Qin Yu's battle strength was not afraid of Jiyu Wudi at all. Die. Jiyu Wudi was a decisive person. He did not waste any more time and immediately rushed out. The heavenly origin energy, which was as vast as the sea, boiled and exploded. Like a torrent, it swept towards Qin Yu, wanting to annihilate him. Swallow. However, just as Jiyu Wudi's attack appeared, Qin Yu had already awakened the war spirit fusion. The swallowing heaven dragon seal swallowed Jiyu Wudi's attack and counterattacked. Jiyu Wudi was shocked. Such a strange method of direct devouring really shocked him quite a bit. One had to know that at his level, he could already faintly control the laws of heaven and earth. Compared to the heaven demon old man, he was several levels stronger. Even if Qin Yu could use the power of the War Sky Divine Array to erupt with battle strength comparable to a perfect heavenly ethereal realm expert, it should not be so easy for him to dissolve his attack. Sun Moon Divine Fist. Jiyu Wudi's face turned serious. He restrained his previous underestimation and went all out. After he shattered Qin Yu's attack, a blazing sun and a bright moon appeared behind him. The sun and moon merged and evolved into yin-yang divine force. Following Jiyu Wudi's shout, he punched out. The sun and moon of yin-yang fused into the fist light and attacked Qin Yu. It was so fast that one could only vaguely see a ray of yin-yang light before it arrived in front of Qin Yu. Break. At the same time, a deafening roar sounded and the War Sky Divine Array shook violently. When Nangong Baking saw that Jiyu Wudi was trapped by the War Sky Divine Array, he immediately changed his target and fiercely attacked the War Sky Divine Array. Nangong Baking and Jiyu Wudi were both perfect heavenly ethereal realm experts. When the two of them joined forces, they erupted with terrifying battle strength that could destroy heaven and earth. The originally indestructible war sky divine array shook violently in an instant. It looked like it would collapse at any time. However, Qin Yu, who was attacked from both inside and outside, did not change his expression. Chapter 789. Dragon Soul. Qin Yu thought as he looked at Nangong Baking, who was attacking madly outside the battle god array. Reverse time, double space-time. Immediately, the dragon soul in the divine dragon ancient seal formed a seal with its hands and performed a divine ability. In an instant, the space outside the battle god array became distorted and blurred as if space was in turmoil. Secret spatial technique? Nangong Baking, who was attacking madly, sensed it immediately. Nangong Baking squinted his eyes and prepared to cast a secret technique to stabilize the void. However, a mysterious force suddenly surged out. This is the power of time. Space-time divine ability. Nangong Baking's expression changed drastically. He immediately retreated as if he had seen a ghost. Because the flowing mysterious energy was shockingly the energy of time. Even though Nangong Baking's cultivation had reached the limit of the heavenly ethereal stage, he still did not dare to touch the power of time. In the past, there was an ancient almighty in the void zone who could control the power of time. In a single night, he had caused an ancient divine clan to disappear from the world. That was because that ancient almighty had directly caused the time of the ancient divine race to pass by hundreds of millions of years overnight. Even heavenly ascension realm existences, who were strong enough to be titled as emperors, could not live for billions of years. Where did this person come from? Nangong Baking's face turned ugly. Jiyu Wudi was probably not useful now that he was entangled by the ancient divine ability. Now, the battle god race had the upper hand. In a short period of time, another heavenly ethereal stage existence had fallen. As for the heavenly gods who had formed the battle god array, more than 100 of them had died. The power of the 10 ancient divine battle spirits was too terrifying. Suppress. At this moment, Zhon Wuqiang had already fixed his eyes on Nangong Baking. He immediately brought the battle god seal with him and charged towards Nangong Baking. As promised, Qin Yu had already entangled Jiyu Wudi, who was second only to Nangong Baking. Zhon Wuqiang naturally would not allow Nangong Baking to interfere with Qin Yu. Sacred refining spirit art. Nangong Baking's face twitched as he exuded an earth-shaking qi. Like a god of death, he fought against Zhon Wuqiang head-on. Both of them were boiling with murderous intent. They attacked with all their might, wanting to kill each other. The heaven and earth yuan qi that was as vast as the sea filled the entire sky. It was like a 10,000-year-old volcano erupting, and it destroyed everything within a radius of thousands of kilometers. Even heavenly ethereal realm cultivators did not dare to step into the area affected by the great battle. Nangong Baking's combat strength was indeed terrifying. This could be seen from the fact that he could fight against Zhon Wuqiang, who had the battle heavenly seal, with his bare hands. However, Zhon Wuqiang's goal was not to kill Nangong Baking. As long as he could stall Nangong Baking, the 10 ancient battle spirits would be able to wipe out the upper echelons of the War God Hall. At that time, Nangong Baking would not be able to do anything alone. Zhon Wuqiang and the other 10 fighting spirits would definitely be able to deal with Nangong Baking. Nangong Baking naturally knew that this was the reason why he had attacked Qin Yu to save Jiyu Wudi. Unfortunately, Qin Yu's strength surpassed Nangong Baking's imagination and caused his plan to fail. He could only look on helplessly as the core battle power of the War God Temple fell one after another. Who are you? I have been in the Void Zone for so many years, but I have never heard of someone like you. In the battle heavenly divine formation, Jiyu Wudi, who had not taken Qin Yu seriously, had a grave expression on his face. His eyes were filled with dread. This was because Jiyu Wudi had discovered that Qin Yu had mastered the power of space-time. If Qin Yu had only reached the complete heavenly ethereal realm with the help of the divine formation, Jiyu Wudi would not have been afraid at all. He had suppressed a complete heavenly ethereal realm cultivator before. However, If Jiyu Wudi had the battle strength of a complete heavenly ethereal realm expert and mastered the spacetime mystique, it would not be as simple as 1+1. After separating Jiyu Wudi with the spacetime mystique, Qin Yu was not in a hurry to attack. You are Zhong Wuji's disciple. Why did you betray the war tribe? Strictly speaking, the outcome of this battle was not very important. After all, the core forces of both sides were Zhong Wuqiong and Nangong backing. Only Zhong Wuqiong and Nangong backing's life and death would determine the direction of the battle. Therefore, Qin Yu did not bother to fight Jiyu Wudi to the death. Jiyu Wudi's eyes flashed with a strange light. He sized up Qin Yu and asked instead of answering, "You are not a member of the war tribe. Why did you get yourself involved in this trouble?" How should I put it? Because Zhong Wuji and the yin-yang god took care of me, I decided to help the war tribe, Qin Yu said indifferently. You have met master and martial ancestor? Jiyu Wudi was stunned. Many people in the void domain knew Zhong Wuji's real name, but very few knew about the yin-yang god. Even back in the Palace of War, only Jiyu Wudi and his disciples knew about the yin-yang god. Apart from them, even the direct descendants of the war tribe had never met the yin-yang god. How did Qin Yu know about his martial ancestor? Could it be that Qin Yu had really been taken care of by master and martial ancestor? Zhong Wuji and the yin-yang god did not hesitate to sacrifice their lives to protect the void domain. They risked their lives to suppress the sky devils. However, as his disciples, not only did you fail to protect his descendants, you even took away their rightful position in the name of righteousness. Tell me, if Zhong Wuji were to find out about this, how would he feel? Qin Yu said with a smile. His tone was filled with ridicule. The main reason the war tribe had fallen in recent years was that Zhong Wuji had used a forbidden art to deal with the sky devils, which had sealed their bloodline. This was also the reason why Zhong Wuji had left behind his bloodline and other legacies before he passed away. Jiyu Wudi's face twitched upon hearing this. His eyes were filled with guilt, regret, and other complicated emotions. He now believed that Qin Yu might have met his master. After all the races in the void domain, including the war tribe, only knew that Zhong Wuji had suddenly disappeared. However, Jiyu Wudi and Nangong backing knew that Zhong Wuji had led his disciples to fight the sky devils. Back then, they had only stayed because they were too weak. However, none of the senior brothers and sisters who had followed Zhong Wuji had returned. Since Qin Yu knew about this, he must know the inside story. After a moment of silence, Jiyu Wudi said in a hoarse voice, "It has already happened. Do you still expect me to atone for my sins?" Although he had not slaughtered the war tribe during the civil war, Nangong backing had been able to divide the Palace of War because he had stood on Nangong Baiqing's side. Thus, the blood grudge of the war clan's people was something he had to shoulder as well. There was no way he could escape responsibility. Since you chose to stand by and do nothing back then, I'll stand by and do nothing today. Take it as an eye for an eye. Of course, you can't leave before the battle outside ends. Qin Yu looked at the war god temple and the war tribe that were fighting fiercely. His calm voice was filled with unquestionable confidence. Chapter 790. With the help of the heaven-battling divine array and the space-time mystique, Qin Yu's battle strength was comparable to Jiyu Wudi's. It was impossible for Jiyu Wudi to break out of the divine array in a short period of time. In fact, if Qin Yu had truly wanted to kill Jiyu Wudi, whether or not Jiyu Wudi would be able to survive today was another matter altogether. Qin Yu had only used the heaven-battling divine array and the space-time mystique. He had not used any of his other trump cards yet. Jiyu Wudi looked solemn as he stared at Qin Yu. Judging from the current situation, Qin Yu was not exaggerating. With the space-time mystique and the heaven-battling divine array, even if Jiyu Wudi risked his life, he would not be able to break the array in a short period of time. Qin Yu looked at Jiyu Wudi, who was not moving, and then looked at the battle between Zhong Wuqiong and Jiyu Wudi. Although he and Jiyu Wudi were in the heaven-battling divine array and were very close to each other, the space between them was filled with space-time energy. As long as Jiyu Wudi made the slightest move, Qin Yu would be able to react in an instant and separate Jiyu Wudi. Jiyu Wudi seemed to be aware of his own situation and did not attack anymore. He looked at the battle outside. At this moment, The battle between the war tribe and the war god hall had reached its climax. All kinds of secret skills and killing moves filled the area. Heavenly origin energy was like a vast ocean. However, with the help of the 10 ancient war spirits, the war tribe experts had gained the upper hand. 7 heavenly ethereal realm experts of the war god hall had already fallen. The other heavenly gods had also suffered heavy losses. The smell of blood filled the air. Nangong Baking, who was fighting with Zhong Wuqiong, felt the continuous deaths of the war tribe experts. His face turned pale and his heart bled. Those heavenly god realm and heavenly ethereal realm elders had been cultivated by him for hundreds of years. In the end, they were easily killed. Boom. After Nangong Baking and Zhong Wuqiong exchanged a blow in the air, they were both sent flying. The energy fluctuations on their bodies were chaotic, as if they had suffered a heavy backlash. Today, not a single one of you from the war clan should think about leaving here alive. This time around, Nangong Baking did not take the initiative to rush out. After the previous battle, he could tell that it would be difficult for him to suppress Zhong Wuqiong, who had the heaven battling seal. Because of that, an incomparably ruthless expression appeared in Nangong Baking's eyes. His hands began to form hand seals, and a special destructive ripple was emitted. They could faintly see strange dark runes appearing on Nangong Baking's skin, which spread across his entire body, causing his aura to change tremendously. What power is this? Zhong Wuqiong, who was about to take the opportunity to attack Nangong Baking, stopped abruptly. Nangong Baking's aura was too dangerous. Even with the heaven battling seal, Zhong Wuqiong did not dare to act rashly. Is that the sky demon's aura? Qin Yu, who was holding Jiyu Wudi back within the heaven battling divine matrix, was visibly moved. He could sense that the strange dark runes on Nangong Baking's body were the aura of the sky demon clan that he had sensed in the holy world. Zhong Wuji and the yin-yang god had sacrificed their lives to suppress the invading sky demon clan. Zhong Wuji did not even have the chance to enter the reincarnation cycle. As Zhong Wudi's disciple, Nangong Baking was actually in cahoots with the Sky Demon clan. Demon chaos. Nangong Baking roared furiously as his body emitted millions of rays of dark light. It was filled with an evil aura, as if an ancient demon was about to be born. At that moment, the chaotic battlefield fell silent. Everyone felt a chill run down their spines as they turned their heads to look at Nangong Baking. Even the 10 ancient war spirits stopped as they looked at Nangong Baking with eyes that flickered with spiritual light. Unparalleled battle aura surged out. Sizzle. Sizzle. A few war god hall experts who were approaching Nangong Baking were directly crushed by the demon light. The terrifying aura was like the descent of an ancient demon god. Not good. Retreat. Zhong Wuqiong roared furiously as he sensed the terrifying demon light on Nangong Baking's body. He ordered the war tribe members to retreat. What is that? The temple master is even killing his own people. Run. The temple master has not fully mastered this demon Dao secret skill. Once he gets involved, he will definitely die. The expressions of the war god hall experts changed drastically. They could not care less about fighting with the war tribe members as they frantically retreated. They felt as if their souls were about to leave their bodies. The war tribe members also sensed the danger and quickly retreated from Nangong Baking. Even so, many of them were pierced by the demon light and died. Patriarch, what kind of superpower is that? The war tribe heavenly ethereal realm experts gathered around Zhong Wuqiong and asked solemnly. They could sense an extremely terrifying destructive aura from Zhong Wuqiong's body. The destructive aura was so terrifying that it made their souls tremble. They could not bring themselves to fight. At this moment, even if they had the help of the 10 war spirits, they would not be able to defeat Nangong Baking. This seems to be the demon Dao aura. Could it be that Nangong Baking has entered the demon Dao? Zhong Wuqiong's face was solemn and he felt a sense of danger. I have already said that none of you will live today. Ancient demon boundary. Nangong Baking, who was surrounded by eerie black Dao inscriptions, shouted as his eyes turned red. He looked ferociously at Zhong Wuqiong and the others. Boom. 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 As soon as he finished speaking, a deafening explosion sounded in the area. It was as if thunder had exploded. Immediately after, the war tribe and the war god hall members realized that the space within a 1,000-mile radius had become as clear as a mirror. Soon, some of them reacted and their faces changed drastically. That was because, at this moment, the entire region was sealed by an incomparably frightening spirit formation. Everyone was like a bird in a cage, completely trapped. Not only the martial artists of the two superpowers, but even the experts of the superpowers that were close to them were trapped in the boundary and they could not escape. Demonic spirit. Immediately after, Nangong Backing formed a seal with his hands and roared at the sky. His voice shook the 9 heavens. One could clearly see the black Dao inscriptions on Nangong Backing's body twisting crazily. Demonic chi surged out and surged into the sky. In the blink of an eye, half of the area behind Nangong Backing was covered by the black demonic chi. It covered the sky and covered the sun. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Amidst the demonic chi, there were howls and cries that made one's heart palpitate. One could vaguely see a huge and ferocious demonic spirit charging within the demonic chi. It was as if it wanted to break through the boundary between heaven and earth and rush out from another world. Whoosh! A figure flashed and Qin Yu appeared beside Zhong Wuqiong and the others from the space-time illusory world. Jiyu Wudi, who was trapped, was naturally freed as well. However, at this moment, Jiyu Luantian also noticed that something was wrong with Nangong Backing. He did not take the opportunity to attack Qin Yu and the others. Instead, he focused on Nangong Backing. He could no longer sense Nangong Backing's aura from Nangong Backing's body. Instead, it was replaced by a strange demonic chi that made his heart palpitate. He has refined the remnant soul of the sky demon race. Right now, he is communicating with the ancient demon power left behind by the sky demon race. Qin Yu had already noticed the change in Nangong Backing and transmitted his voice to Zhong Wuqiong and the others. Remnant soul of the sky demon race? Ancient demon power? Although Zhong Wuqiong and the others had inherited the legacy of the old ancestor of the war race, they still did not know what the sky demon race was. Little friend, do you have any ideas? Of course, at this moment, they did not have the time to ask about the sky demon race in detail. Right now, they had to think of a way to kill Nangong Backing. I will deal with those demonic spirits. You guys work together with the others to kill Nangong Backing. Qin Yu said in a deep voice. Those demonic spirits were not easy to deal with. Even with the boost of the Heavens Battling God formation and the 9 esoteric battle dragon, it was still extremely dangerous. We have to be careful. Zhong Wuqiong nodded his head solemnly. He could also see that the demonic spirits behind Nangong Backing were much more dangerous than Nangong Backing himself. However, Qin Yu's background was mysterious. Since he had taken the initiative to fight, he should be able to deal with them. As long as they worked together with the 10 war spirits, they would be able to kill Nangong Backing. Kill. At this moment, Nangong Backing shouted. It was as if there was an earth-shattering battle cry. From the surging demonic chi, huge demonic spirits rushed out. Although those demonic spirits also gave off a strong aura of the sky demon race, they were different from the sky demon race that Qin Yu had seen before. Strictly speaking, these demonic spirits were the sky demon race that had died in the past. They had borrowed the power of the ancient demon to be reborn. Roar! Qin Yu leaped into the air and pounced forward. As he rushed out, a dragon roar resounded from his body and a mighty dragon aura swept out. Numerous deep cyan-colored dragon scales appeared on Qin Yu's skin. Exquisite and beautiful dragon markings appeared on each of the dragon scales. They were sparkling and translucent. At this moment, Qin Yu's aura skyrocketed at an extremely shocking speed. Furthermore, during this sort of sudden increase in power, Qin Yu, who had dragon scales all over his body, had completely fused with the heaven-battling divine formation. Or it could be said that Qin Yu had directly devoured the heaven-battling divine formation and fused the two into one. The dragon race. Jiyu Wudi, who was standing at the side, was shocked when he saw Qin Yu's mighty dragon aura. The dragon race had been extinct in the void zone for countless years. He had not expected Qin Yu to be a member of the dragon race. No wonder his cultivation base was so weak, but his battle prowess was so terrifying. Rumble. While Jiyu Wudi and the others were still in shock, Qin Yu clashed with the ferocious demonic spirits head-on. The two of them exploded with destructive power, and more than half of the boundary space shook violently. Devour. Qin Yu struck out with his palm, and the heaven-devouring dragon seal turned into a pitch-black vortex that was dozens of meters wide. It was unfathomable, and directly devoured a demonic spirit. When Nangong Backing saw Qin Yu's actions, a cold smile appeared on his face. "You're courting death." Although those demonic spirits were not true heavenly demons, they contained the will of the heavenly demons. They could not be killed, nor could they be destroyed. Qin Yu wanted to use such a simple method to deal with the demonic spirits. That was a complete fool's dream. However, to Nangong Backing's surprise, the demonic spirit that was devoured actually disappeared into the vortex, and did not appear again. "What's going on?" Nangong Backing's face stiffened, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. "Appear." At this moment, Qin Yu, who had just devoured a demonic spirit, formed a seal with his hands. Dragon Qi surged out of his body, and then several figures appeared. Those silhouettes were exactly the same as Qin Yu. They were practically carved from the same mold. There were several tens of them. It was the Dragon Qi derivation secret skill that Qin Yu had created. Swoosh. 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 After those figures appeared, they immediately rushed towards the demonic spirits. Under the control of Qin Yu's main body, the heaven-devouring dragon seal was continuously used. The demonic spirits that rushed out were devoured before they could even fight. Where did this person come from? Nangong Backing regained his senses, and a chilling killing intent appeared in his eyes. One had to know that the demonic spirits that he had summoned were not any weaker than the 10 battle spirits of the war tribe. However, they were all devoured by Qin Yu in an instant. Such a method could be said to be extremely strange. Attack. At this moment, Zhon Wuqiang saw Qin Yu's strength and immediately shouted. He gathered the heavenly ethereal realm experts of the war tribe and the 10 battle spirits and charged towards Nangong Backing from all directions. Die. Nangong Backing no longer cared about Qin Yu. He opened his hands, and a long spear appeared in his left hand and a battle sword appeared in his right hand. Nangong Backing rushed out and waved his long spear and battle sword. Countless strange demonic runes formed and turned into sword qi that shot towards Zhon Wuqiang and the others. In an instant, the two sides clashed, and a violent battle broke out once again. Although it was 1 against 10, Nangong Backing was not afraid at all. Compared to before, there was a huge difference between the current him and the previous him. The destructive and evil demonic light shot out in all directions and pierced through the void. It was so powerful that the heavenly ethereal realm elders of the war tribe could not withstand it. Luckily, the 10 battle spirits were assisting them. Otherwise, Zhon Wuqiang and the others would have been defeated long ago. As for Qin Yu's side, devil souls were continuously charging out from the surging devil qi. They were endless, as if there was no end to them. It's not that easy to deal with them. Qin Yu's eyes narrowed, but he was not surprised. If the Sky Demon tribe could be dealt with so easily, Zhon Wuji and his disciples would not have lost their lives. Seeing that Nangong Backing was trapped by Zhon Wuqiang and the others, Qin Yu used his clones to resist the demonic spirits, while his body flashed and rushed into the demonic qi. The moment he rushed in, there were billions of screams and howls. It was as if he had fallen into the 9 Serenities hell. There were billions of evil spirits screaming, which made his hair stand on end. However, Qin Yu did not react in the slightest. That was because at this moment, a layer of hazy pitch-black devil light was being emitted from his entire body. This was the power of the ancestor demon statue in Qin Yu's body. The demonic spirits that Qin Yu had devoured with the sky-devouring dragon seal had not been destroyed. Instead, he had transferred them into the ancestor demon statue. In front of the ancestor demon statue, those demonic spirits could not resist at all and were directly refined. It was a pity that the ancestor demon statue had been refined by the yin-yang divine sovereign and could no longer be activated by the ancient demon power. Otherwise, the demonic spirits and demonic qi would be a great supplement. After going deeper into the demonic qi, Qin Yu came to the core area where the demonic qi was gushing out. As for the demonic spirits that he encountered along the way, They were all devoured by Qin Yu. At the center of the area, an ancient door with an illusionary appearance could be seen floating in the air. Chapter 791. The surging demonic qi came from the door of the ancient realm. Qin Yu was no stranger to the door of the ancient realm. He had seen it that day in the secret realm. However, it had been summoned by the real heavenly demon clan, and its demonic qi had far surpassed the door of the ancient realm. Break. Without the slightest hesitation, Qin Yu immediately summoned the ancestral devil statue and violently punched out. Immediately, the void boiled like water, and a vacuum passage dozens of feet wide appeared, extending all the way to the door of the ancient realm. There was a loud rumble, and then a violent shockwave swept out like a flash flood or a tsunami. The entire boundary space shook violently. The demonic souls in the surroundings were annihilated by the shockwave before they could even react. Then, with a soft crack, a clear crack appeared on the door of the ancient realm. Qin Yu focused his eyes and knew that his guess was right. This door of the ancient realm was far inferior to the one summoned by the real heavenly demon clan. Qin Yu did not stop, and immediately continued to summon the ancestor demon statue to bombard the door of the ancient realm. In an instant, the void filled with demonic qi turned into a chaotic zone of destruction. All the demonic souls were annihilated, and no one could step in. If not for the ancestor demon statue and the dragon soul's power of time and space, Qin Yu would not have been able to stay here. As the ancestor demon statue continued to bombard the door of the ancient realm, more and more cracks appeared. The void around the door of the ancient realm shook slightly, as if it would collapse at any moment. Is the door of the ancient realm about to be broken? At this moment, Nangong Backing, who had single-handedly fought Wu Qiong, the others, and the 10 ancient battle spirits, suddenly revealed a look of horror on his ferocious face. He could clearly sense that the source of the powerful power in his body, the ancient demon power, was becoming extremely unstable and was even gradually flowing away. Who was that person just now? Nangong Backing couldn't help but feel terrified. He hadn't paid much attention to Qin Yu, because he had assumed that Qin Yu would be torn to shreds by the devilish souls inside. But who would have thought that not only was Qin Yu not torn to shreds, but his foundation was also endangered? Nangong Backing wanted to turn around and fight back, but Zhong Wuqiong and the others seemed to have noticed it. They quickly activated the 10 ancient battle spirits and surrounded Nangong Backing, preventing him from escaping. This caused Nangong Backing to become even more terrified. He roared again and again as his battle power soared to the heavens. However, he was still unable to escape from the predicament before him. If this continues, you won't be able to escape calamity. Leave it to me. But at this moment, an old and sinister voice suddenly sounded from within Nangong Backing's body. Nangong Backing still has a soul in his body. As expected, this power doesn't belong to Nangong Backing. Everyone, be careful. That old and sinister voice was not concealed at all. Therefore, even Zhong Wuqiong and the rest could hear it clearly. This caused them to be extremely vigilant. Aren't you afraid that your identity will be exposed if you speak so openly? Nangong Backing's face darkened as he pondered over this. Once the ancient demon gate is destroyed, it will be difficult for me to survive. Since that's the case, what's the point of continuing to hide? Of course, if you let me take control of the body and kill all of these people, you won't have to worry about your identity being exposed. That old and sinister voice said. What a nice way to put it. Don't tell me that you want to use this opportunity to control me and turn me into a puppet. Nangong Backing coldly replied, as if he did not trust that old and sinister voice. If you don't trust me, then there's nothing I can do. At most, we'll die together. That old and sinister voice did not explain and said indifferently, rumble. At this moment, another earth-shattering explosion sounded out from the chaotic demonic aura. This time, as the explosion sounded out, the huge demonic souls that were just born within the demonic aura were completely shattered and could not be reborn. Even the demonic aura that was constantly surging was weakened by half. Do you really want to die like this? At this moment, even that old and sinister voice sounded somewhat anxious. I want everyone from the war tribe to be buried here. The corners of Nangong Backing's eyes twitched as a ruthless expression appeared in his eyes. Shortly after, He closed his eyes as the pitch-black ancient demonic runes on his body emitted a dazzling light. "Don't worry, not a single person who knows of my existence will survive." That old and sinister voice became increasingly sinister, causing one's body to feel a chill. "Stop him." Hearing Nangong backing and that old and sinister voice's undisguised words, the expressions of Zhong Wuqiong and the others changed drastically as they immediately attacked with all their might. The 10 ancient battle spirits did not hesitate as they ignited their ancient source energies and charged towards Nangong backing. Die. Just as all the attacks were about to reach Nangong backing's body, he suddenly opened his eyes. His originally blood-red eyes had become pitch black and the whites of his eyes were completely pitch black. They were like a bottomless vortex that could devour one's soul. With a furious roar, a pitch-black light wave swept out in all directions with Nangong backing as the center. Wherever it passed, all the attacks that were sweeping towards him were annihilated. How could it be? Could it be that he has entered the heavenly palace realm? How could it be? Zhong Wuqiong and the others were shocked and could not hide their shock and fear. In the Void Zone, the heavenly palace realm was a supreme existence that was rarely seen in Shenron. For so many years, the Void Zone had been turbulent, the overlords had changed positions, and the great clans had been destroyed. However, the heavenly palace realm experts had never appeared. It was as if they had all been silent. Of course, all the forces in the Void Zone knew that there were heavenly palace realm experts hidden in the Void Zone. Once they appeared, the situation in the Void Zone would change. It was enough to show how terrifying the combat strength of a heavenly palace realm expert was. But now, Nangong backing, who seemed to be a different person, had the combat strength of a heavenly palace realm expert. He could fight against 10 of them alone, and with a roar, he had shattered their attacks. Such terrifying strength was not something a heavenly ethereal realm expert could do. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The 10 ancient fighting spirits seemed to have seen their mortal enemy. They were out of Zhong Wuqiong's control and rushed towards Nangong backing crazily. "Since you're already dead, why do you need to leave behind a remnant soul? Let me free you all." Zhong Wuqiong and the others did not know why the 10 ancient fighting spirits had gone berserk. However, Nangong backing did not seem to be surprised at all. Instead, he smiled eerily. He took a step into the air and disappeared in an instant. In the next moment, he appeared beside the ancient battle spirit like a ghost. His hands slashed out like 2 sharp blades, faintly tearing apart the void. Immediately, the ancient fighting spirit was shredded into pieces before it could react. It did not have the slightest resistance and disappeared in the blink of an eye. How could it be? Zhong Wuqiong and the others were shocked when they saw the scene. The combat strength of the ancient fighting spirit was enough to fight against a complete heavenly ethereal realm expert. However, it had been shredded into pieces by Nangong backing, who had changed his personality. When they looked at Nangong backing, they realized that his 10 fingers were surrounded by black Dao inscriptions. They were exuding an extremely destructive fluctuation that sent chills down their spines. What kind of power was that? Shoosh. While the people of the war tribe were still in shock, Nangong backing flashed out again. Every time he flashed, an ancient fighting spirit would be killed. The ancient fighting spirits roared silently and their fighting spirit surged. However, they were still unable to stop Nangong backing. In just a few breaths, all of them had been killed. After killing the 10 ancient fighting spirits, Nangong backing's black eyes looked at Zhong Wuqiong and the others. His unfathomable black eyes were emotionless. Oh no! Retreat! Zhong Wuqiong felt an unprecedented sense of danger. He immediately shouted and retreated quickly. Poof! However, just as Zhong Wuqiong's voice fell, the sound of flesh being torn apart could be heard. In an instant, Nangong backing had disappeared and the few grand elders of the war tribe who had gathered around Zhong Wuqiong were all killed. Zhong Wuqiong had barely escaped death with the help of the war sky seal. However, he had suffered a huge blow and was sent flying back with blood spurting out of his mouth. He has reached the heavenly ethereal realm. Zhong Wuqiong could not hide the shock in his eyes. He used the war sky seal to protect his body and quickly retreated. Clan leader, Grand Elder, When the people of the war tribe saw the injured Zhong Wuqiong and the grand elders that had been killed, they were furious and wanted to go over to help. Kill. However, when the people of the war god hall saw that Nangong Baking had regained his consciousness and suddenly unleashed his power, they immediately charged towards the people of the war tribe to help Nangong Baking. Poof 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 poof. However, no matter if it was the people of the war tribe or the war god hall, when they came within a few hundred feet of Nangong Baking, they all exploded and turned into blood mist. Don't come over. Zhong Wuqiong was heartbroken. He immediately shouted and ordered the people of the war tribe to stay away. Even without Zhong Wuqiong's reminder, the people of the war god hall and the people of the war god hall were all scared out of their wits. They all retreated and did not dare to take even half a step closer. It has been a long time since I absorbed such living blood. At this moment, Nangong Baking did not chase after Zhong Wuqiong and the others. After all, this area was under his control and no one would be able to escape. Nangong Baking opened his arms and closed his eyes. He had a look of enjoyment on his face as he crazily absorbed the blood mist around him. One could clearly feel that as he absorbed the blood mist, Nangong Baking's aura was increasing at a crazy speed. Boom! At this moment, a deafening explosion sounded and a terrifying shockwave surged out. The demonic qi in the area where Qin Yu was standing was swept away. Qin Yu's figure gradually appeared. There was only one ancient door, which was covered in cracks and was about to shatter. In the end, with a loud explosion, the ancient door exploded and turned into specks of light that scattered in all directions. However, what was strange was that Nangong Baking, who seemed to be anxious about the ancient door, opened his eyes and looked at it quietly. Other than that, there was nothing strange about him. After destroying the ancient door, Qin Yu also felt Nangong Baking's strange gaze and looked over. Heavenly Demon Tribe? With just a glance, Qin Yu frowned. This was because Nangong Tianfeng gave him the feeling that he was facing a member of the Heavenly Demon Tribe. Qin Yu felt that the sense of danger was extremely familiar. It was definitely the aura of the Heavenly Demon Tribe. Has his body been taken over? Qin Yu's eyes flickered and he quickly reacted. You have the blood of the human race and the dragon race in your body. But what makes me more curious is why you have the aura of our sacred clan. The two looked at each other for a moment. Then, Nangong Baking took a step forward and instantly appeared a few dozen feet away from Qin Yu. At this distance, Zhong Wuqiong and the others were frightened. With Nangong Baking's frightening and exceptional speed, Nangong Baking did not even need an instant to cross the several tens of feet distance between them and kill Qin Yu. However, Qin Yu was still standing in the same place after seeing Nangong Baking's speed. The frown on his face had returned to normal and there was not the slightest change in his expression. I thought that all the heavenly demons who invaded the void zone had been killed. I didn't expect that there were still remnant souls left. Qin Yu said indifferently after hearing Nangong Baking's words. There was no fear on his face. So, you have seen other heavenly demons. You are making me more and more interested. Nangong Baking let out a sinister and strange laugh after he finished speaking. His figure swayed slightly before he directly disappeared. In the next moment, a figure appeared in the void in front of Qin Yu without any warning. A palm covered in strange black Dao patterns suddenly grabbed at Qin Yu. However, at the moment when Nangong Baking's palm that was emitting a destructive energy fluctuation was about to touch Qin Yu, the entire space surrounding Qin Yu started to lightly tremble. Immediately, Qin Yu saw that the palm that was surrounded by strange pitch-black Dao markings stopped at a distance only a few centimeters away from Qin Yu. It was unable to advance any further. No, to be precise, Qin Yu stood in the same place and did not move for a moment. However, Nangong Baking, who had attacked Qin Yu, was still rushing forward at an extremely fast speed. The two were only a few inches apart. One was motionless like a statue, while the other was rushing forward at lightning speed. What was strange was that Nangong Baking could not cross the distance of a few inches no matter what he did. It was as if there was a chasm between heaven and earth. The power of time. You have comprehended the power of time and space. From the outside, it was an extremely strange scene. However, Nangong Baking reacted immediately, and a look of shock appeared on his face. Such a profound and pure power of time and space. Could Qin Yu have already comprehended the rules of time and space? Otherwise, with his mere cultivation of the heavenly venerate realm, even with the help of external forces, it was impossible for him to possess such a mysterious and unfathomable power of time and space. At this moment, Qin Yu had already made his move. In the eyes of the crowd, Qin Yu had only used a simple chop of his hand to effortlessly chop down. However, in the eyes of Nangong Baking, who was close at hand, there were billions of blade lights that turned into a torrent of blade lights that would completely drown him. There was no way for him to escape. This was the power of time and space. Not only did it affect space, but it also greatly affected the flow of time. Divine Demon as one. At this critical moment, Nangong Baking's reaction was not slow at all. He immediately let out a low roar, and a strange black fog emerged from his body, forming a huge two-faced celestial demon Dharma idol. The celestial demon avatar and the millions of blade lights collided in an instant. That enormous and terrifying shockwave swept through the entire world. Many people with weaker cultivations were instantly smashed into pieces. In the next moment, an explosion rang out, and the huge god-demon figure exploded, turning into chaotic and destructive waves that spread out. It really is the power of the divine ancestor. Who are you? Nangong Baking was knocked back by the impact, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. However, Nangong Baking did not seem to notice that he was injured. He only looked at Qin Yu in shock. Although the body he took over was injured, his demonic soul was unharmed. The dragon soul that was helping Qin Yu with its space-time divine ability said solemnly. Although the attack just now seemed to have injured Nangong Baking, it did not actually hurt the heavenly demon avatar that had taken over Nangong Baking's body. Now, we can only see if the immortal subduing palace and the immortal refining cauldron can suppress and refine him. Qin Yu could naturally see that the heavenly demon avatar's soul was not injured. With a thought, Qin Yu summoned the immortal subduing palace and the immortal refining cauldron to his side. How did these two divine treasures end up in your hands? Nangong Baking was even more shocked when he saw the immortal subduing palace and the immortal refining cauldron appear around Qin Yu. Crack! Qin Yu ignored him and was about to summon the two divine treasures to suppress Nangong Baking. However, at this moment, a crisp tearing sound suddenly rang out in Qin Yu's ears. Then, dazzling sunlight shone in. Qin Yu was startled and looked up. He saw a figure easily tear apart the ancient barrier that Nangong Baking had set up and descend from the sky. How is this possible? Nangong Baking hurriedly looked up as well. When he saw that person easily tear apart the barrier and descend, his pitch-black eyes could not help but shrink as he froze on the spot. The person who had arrived was a skinny old man with an ordinary appearance. He did not have the slightest bit of powerful aura on him, as if he was an old man who did not have long to live. However, no one present dared to underestimate the skinny old man. They had personally experienced how terrifying the barrier that Nangong Baking had set up was. Even if they worked together, they would not be able to break it. However, it was easily torn apart in the hands of the withered old man. How could someone with such strength be a nobody? A heavenly palace elite has appeared. At this moment, everyone who had witnessed the scene had the same thought. Perhaps only someone who had stepped into the heavenly palace realm could do it so easily. I did not expect that there would still be remnants of the heavenly demon avatar here. After the skinny old man descended, his starry eyes paused on Qin Yu for a moment before he looked at Nangong Baking and said faintly. Nangong Baking's face changed drastically when he heard the skinny old man's words. Although Qin Yu's methods had shocked him, that was all. However, this skinny old man, who looked like he could be blown away by a gust of wind, made Nangong Baking feel endless fear in his heart. There was no doubt that the skinny old man who had suddenly appeared was definitely a supreme being. It was very likely that he was a supreme being who had stabilized the heavenly reaching Emperor realm. Run! Without any hesitation, Nangong Baking's body emitted millions of rays of black light, causing the void around him to shake violently. He was preparing to break through the void and escape. The heavenly demon avatar was known to be immortal and indestructible. Even if they had been suppressed for millions of years, they could not be erased. However, In front of a true heavenly reaching Emperor realm elite, he could not do anything at all. Whoosh. However, at this moment, the skinny old man suddenly struck out with his palm. As his palm struck out, the void trembled, and a tornado appeared out of nowhere. The tornado whistled past, instantly enveloping Nangong Backing. Then, as the tornado whistled past, it rapidly shrank until it finally condensed into ropes. The ropes seemed to have a mind of their own. Without waiting for orders, they bound Nangong Backing inch by inch, completely sealing him. No matter how Nangong Tianfeng struggled, or how he unsheathed his demonic soul, it was useless. This made Nangong Tianfeng even more terrified. In his eyes, the skinny old man was like the king of hell who controlled the book of life and death. So powerful. He can't be a heavenly reaching emperor realm existence, right? Qin Yu and the dragon soul looked at the withered old man who managed to suppress Nangong Tianfeng with a casual wave of his hand. They were incomparably shocked and frightened. The skinny old man's aura was much more terrifying than Zhong Wuji and the yin-yang god's aura in the secret realm. Of course, Zhong Wuji and the yin-yang god were not at their peak, so it was impossible to know if the skinny old man's cultivation was stronger than Zhong Wuji and his disciples. However, there was one thing that was certain, and it was that the emaciated old man was definitely a supreme almighty. While he was shocked, Qin Yu also faintly sensed that the skinny old man's aura was somewhat familiar, as if he had sensed it somewhere before. Chirp chirp. While Qin Yu was pondering, a sharp and clear bird's cry suddenly sounded. Immortal Phoenix. Qin Yu quivered and suddenly reacted. He finally knew why the aura of this withered old man gave him a familiar feeling. The skinny old man was emitting the aura of the immortal Phoenix tribe. However, the skinny old man's aura was extremely pure, so pure that it was completely different. Thus, Qin Yu did not immediately react. Chirp chirp. As for the young immortal phoenix that had fallen into a deep slumber after refining the bloodline, it seemed to be extremely excited. It flapped its wings continuously, wanting to fly out from the divine dragon ancient seal. It is indeed here. At this moment, the skinny old man also sensed the fluctuation of the young immortal phoenix. His deep gaze once again landed on Qin Yu's body, and a smile appeared on his face. Immediately, the skinny old man casually pointed. Nangong Backing, who was bound and sealed, did not even have the slightest reaction before his entire body exploded, and his soul was completely scattered. This scene caused the corners of everyone's eyes to twitch wildly, and their hearts to turn cold. Nangong Tianfeng, who was so powerful, had actually been squashed like an ant. The skinny old man's strength was simply too terrifying. After eliminating Nangong Backing, the skinny old man took a step forward and directly appeared in front of Qin Yu. The space-time ability surrounding Qin Yu was completely ineffective against the skinny old man. The new book, I Have a Billion Fiend God Inheritances, has been released. Please support it. Chapter 792. The junior of the immortal Phoenix tribe seems to have received a lot of care from you. The skinny old man was surrounded by the real rules of heaven and earth and ignored the dragon soul's spacetime superpower. Senior, are you from the immortal Phoenix tribe? Qin Yu and the dragon soul, who were extremely shocked, immediately reacted. The skinny old man's cultivation had definitely reached the heavenly completion realm, which was enough to be titled as an emperor. Moreover, he had come for the young immortal phoenix. No wonder the young immortal phoenix was so excited. Qin Yu did not hesitate. With an intention of his mind, the infant immortal phoenix was summoned. The excited young immortal phoenix landed on Qin Yu's shoulder and tilted its head slightly. Its bright eyes sized up the skinny old man, as if to confirm something. It is indeed the royal bloodline. This time, it was the skinny old man's turn to be excited. He could feel the strong bloodline pressure from the young immortal phoenix, and his entire body trembled slightly. Since the bloodline has reached the initial stage of atavism, then the natural enemies hidden in the 10 Directions great world who covet the bloodline of the immortal phoenix tribe will definitely not be able to hold back. You should have sensed it too. Follow me back to the immortal phoenix ancestral land. With the skinny old man's cultivation, he could definitely take the young immortal phoenix away by force. However, at this time, he had a questioning attitude towards the young immortal phoenix. Chirp chirp. Hearing this, the young immortal phoenix turned its head to look at Qin Yu and let out a crisp chirp. I don't know what your natural enemies are, so I can't say for sure. Whether I can protect you or not, you can decide for yourself. Qin Yu and the young immortal phoenix had a contract and their minds were connected. Hence, he understood what the young immortal phoenix meant. The young immortal phoenix looked at Qin Yu with some reluctance. Then, it nodded and flew to the skinny old man's head. Seeing this, the skinny old man's withered face broke into a smile. Rumble. At this time, a huge black hole suddenly appeared in the void. A huge golden claw that was a few 100 feet in size grabbed at the young immortal phoenix. You come as you wish. Your dog's nose is really sharp. In that case, stay here. The originally smiling old man's eyes suddenly darkened and a cold light shot out from his body. He pointed at the air and a 5-colored divine light flashed. With a loud kai sound, the gigantic claw, which was several 100 feet in size, was directly penetrated by the 5-colored divine light. The spatial black hole also completely crumbled. Someone is coming from another region? Qin Yu and the dragon soul's expressions turned solemn. Although the skinny old man was able to destroy the giant claw with a flick of his finger, it seemed like it was easy for him to do so. However, Qin Yu and Yi Zichen could sense that the ferocious giant claw definitely had a strength close to the heavenly completion stage. Only now did they understand why the infant immortal phoenix had fallen into a deep slumber or stayed in the ancient seal of the dragon god ever since it left the seal of the heavenly domain. It seemed like the celestial phoenix baby had sensed something long ago. It's time to go. We'll meet again if fate wills it. The immortal phoenix old man waved his hand casually after destroying the ferocious giant claw with a single finger. Chirp chirp. The immortal phoenix baby was reluctant to leave. It flew to Qin Yu's side and intimately rubbed its head against Qin Yu's face. After all, the immortal phoenix baby had been by Qin Yu's side ever since it was born. Let's go. Qin Yu smiled and patted the immortal phoenix baby, asking it to leave with the immortal phoenix old man. The immortal phoenix old man nodded at Qin Yu. Then, he rushed into the portal with the immortal phoenix baby and disappeared. Following the disappearance of the teleportation array, the enormous pitch-black hole in the sky also disappeared. Heaven and earth regained its stability. It's over. Looking at the gradually disappearing barrier, whether it was the people of the war tribe, the experts of the war god hall, or the besieged forces, they all reacted. Some of the bolder ones immediately flew into the sky and left. Seeing that the crisis had been resolved, the other experts reacted and quickly left. Only the people of the war tribe and the old members of the war tribe who had been summoned stayed where they were. We won. The elders of the war tribe looked at the experts of the war god hall who had run away. After exchanging glances, they were overjoyed and cheered. Although Zhong Wuqiong and the other elders also smiled, there was not much joy on their faces. Although the immortal phoenix old man had appeared in this battle and killed Nangong Baking, the war god hall had been disbanded. However, the 3 supreme elders of the war tribe had died and the rest of the heavenly god realm elders had suffered great losses. Most importantly, the 10 ancient battle spirits in the war god seal had been lost. The strength of the war tribe could be said to have dropped several levels. Fortunately, Xian Danyang and the other old members of the war god hall seemed to have been intimidated by Qin Yu. Not many of them left. This also made Zhong Wuqiong feel slightly relieved. Perhaps, he could use Qin Yu's name to do something. After all, the immortal phoenix old man, who could tear heaven and earth apart with a wave of his hand, was at least at the peak of the heavenly palace stage. He might even be a heavenly ascension stage emperor. With Qin Yu's connections, if their war clan was able to rope Qin Yu in, then there would likely be no one in the entire void region that would dare to provoke them. With this thought, Zhong Wuqiong flew to Qin Yu and told him his purpose. Qin Yu did not refuse Zhong Wuqiong's offer to be an elder consultant of the war tribe. It would not cause him any loss. What Qin Yu cared about was the dragon's tomb that Zhong Wuqiong had seen. With Qin Yu's participation, Xian Danyang and the others also swore allegiance to the war tribe. With this, the situation was set. Like tornadoes, the aftermath of the battle swept across the entire void domain at lightning speed. The news of Nangong Baking's demonization and the immortal Phoenix Old Man's appearance shook the entire Void Zone. After all, it had been many years since a Heavenly Palace stage expert or a Heavenly Ascension stage emperor had appeared in the Void Zone. Because of this battle, the War Tribe had replaced the War God Temple as the overlord of the Void Zone. Even though the survivors of the War God Temple were still lurking in the dark, no one dared to provoke the War Tribe. 3 days later, after Zhon Wuqiong settled the affairs of the War Tribe, he took Qin Yu to the land of the fallen gods. The land of the fallen gods was a desolate land in the northern part of the Void Zone. It was said that ancient gods had fought here in the past, which had turned the land hundreds of millions of kilometers around into ruins. No one had survived. This was because the air here was filled with a strong murderous aura. It was the immortal Tao of slaughter left behind by the supreme experts of the past. Even heavenly ethereal stage experts could be killed if they were careless. There are indeed dragon auras here. Qin Yu and the dragon soul's expressions flickered as soon as they stepped into the land of the fallen gods. They could sense the dragon auras without using any secret magics. However, the dragon auras were very vague. They could sense them, but they could not pinpoint their exact location. It was very mysterious. Chapter 793. It's strange. Could there be a double secret realm here? Qin Yu and the dragon soul searched the land of the fallen gods carefully before reuniting. There are indeed weak spatial fluctuations, but it's hard to find the source. The dragon soul was now more familiar with spacetime superpower, but it still could not find the source. Qin Yu pondered. Zhon Wuqiong had left, and they had been searching the land of the fallen gods for a few days. Since they could not find the dragon's tomb, there was no need to stay here. Let's go back to the fire domain first. The dragon soul sensed that Qin Yu had the intention to leave. Yes, there's no need to waste time here. Let's go to the fire domain to find the Fire Emperor's inheritance and then snatch the ancient Li Fire Dragon from the Fire God Palace. Qin Yu nodded. The two immediately left. Half a month later, Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul left the Void Domain and used the Yin-Yang escape to quietly return to the Flame Realm. At the Fire God Palace, the overlord of the Fire Domain. Roar. An earth-shattering dragon roar resounded. Lava boiled in the vast sea of fire, creating waves of fire that were tens of thousands of feet high. A ferocious dragon shadow could be seen rolling in the waves of fire, giving off a violent and ferocious aura. What's going on? Why is the ancient Li Fire Dragon so angry? Shui Yu, who was wearing armor and looking mighty in the Fire God Palace, sensed the ancient Li Fire Dragon's anger and could not help but stand up and mumble to himself. Since the two thieves had stolen a lot of Dragon Clan's blood essence, the ancient Li Fire Dragon's cultivation had weakened significantly. More importantly, it had lost its natural superpower. Even the ancestral patriarch did not know the reason for it. During this period, the ancient Li Fire Dragon had been recuperating in the Sea of Fire. Why was it so angry today? Puzzled, Shui Yu immediately flew up and headed towards the Sea of Fire. When he arrived at the Sea of Fire, there were already many Fire God Palace experts gathered there. The fire boundary above the Sea of Fire had already been opened, and it blocked the ancient Li Fire Dragon, which was about to break through the air and escape. What's going on? When Shui Yu arrived, he frowned and asked in a deep voice as he looked at the ancient Li Fire Dragon that was emitting a berserk aura. Could it be that someone was trying to take advantage of the ancient Li Fire Dragon? Vice Palace Master, we don't know what's going on either. The ancient Li Fire Dragon suddenly flew into a rage and burned down several elders. It seems like it's going to charge out. An elder of the Fire God Palace, who was sweating profusely, quickly replied. Shui Yu's frown deepened. He took a step forward and appeared in mid-air. Opening his right hand, countless ancient raging flame runes spread out and turned into a giant flame net, suppressing the raging ancient Li Fire Dragon. Even before the ancient Li Fire Dragon's blood essence was taken away, it was only at the heavenly god realm. However, Shui Yu had already stepped into the heavenly empty realm. The moment he made his move, he immediately suppressed the berserk ancient Li Fire Dragon. However, the huge dragon eyes of the ancient Li Fire Dragon still contained an incomparably wild and violent fury. Shui Yu felt a headache coming on. With the disappearance of its natural superpower, the ancient Lee fire dragon could no longer speak. It was extremely troublesome to communicate with it now. At that moment, a flame suddenly flew out from the depths of the fire god palace and landed in front of Shui Yu. Old ancestor? Shui Yu was shocked. Even the old ancestor was alerted. He did not hesitate and immediately looked at the flame. When he saw the message contained in the flame, Shui Yu's eyes were filled with a bone-chilling killing intent and a violent aura surrounded him. They dare to come back to the fire domain. The message in the flame was the reason why the ancient Lee fire dragon had gone berserk. The ancient Lee fire dragon had sensed that Qin Yu and Jian Wushuang, who had taken away its origin blood essence, had appeared in the fire domain again. Last time, you were lucky to escape. This time, I won't give you another chance. Immediately, Shui Yu's expression turned cold as he flew toward the main hall of the fire god palace. Not long later, the fire god palace resounded with the ringing of a bell. The experts of the fire god palace were shocked and immediately gathered around it. Then, a series of secret messages were sent out from the fire god palace and disappeared all over the fire domain. In the west of the fire domain, in front of a barren mountain range, Qin Yu and the dragon soul flew through the air and carefully searched the barren mountain range. Back then, the fire river of the fire spirit tribe had shown them a map of this place. Although the map had disappeared after 49 days, Qin Yu and Jian Wushuang's cultivation level had left a deep impression on them. However, after searching the mountain range for a few rounds, they did not see the divine tower that contained the Fire Emperor's inheritance. Could we have found the wrong place? The dragon soul looked at Qin Yu. He had even used his space-time superpower, but he did not find anything. It should be here. Qin Yu sensed the faint flame mark in his dantian. It should not be here. It seemed like there was a secret in this place. Swoosh 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 swoosh. Suddenly, Qin Yu and the dragon soul moved slightly and immediately hid. It didn't take long for several figures to shoot over from the distant horizon. Those people were all wearing sky-blue robes with a symbol of a cold sword on their backs. Obviously, they were from the same force. However, what caught Qin Yu and Jian Wushuang's attention was that these people's cultivation level had reached the peak of the heavenly god realm. The one-eyed man in the lead was even at the heavenly ethereal realm. Such a force was definitely an overlord force in the fire domain. With so many experts gathered, Qin Yu and Jian Wushuang were even more certain that the Fire Emperor's inheritance was most likely here. After those people arrived, they immediately separated into 3 groups and set up the 7-star ancient array. Then, a strange scene appeared. After ripples appeared in the sky, the color of the entire sky gradually faded, revealing a brand new mountain range. In the mountain range, there was pure spiritual chi of heaven and earth surging. It was like a paradise on earth. It was a completely different scene from the barren mountain range before. That's the ancient divine array, the sky-covering sun-changing formation. Qin Yu immediately recognized it. No wonder they couldn't find it. Originally, it was those people who used the sky-covering sun-changing formation to completely change the appearance of the entire mountain range. After realizing this, Qin Yu did not continue to hide. He took out the yin-yang escape talisman and hid in the void, sneaking into the ancient array. After entering the sky-covering sun-changing formation, Qin Yu glanced at the mountain range and saw the divine tower floating in the air. The divine tower was at least 1,000 feet tall and towered into the clouds. It was surrounded by flaming divine runes and emitted an endless emperor's aura. It was like a supreme ancient emperor looking down on the heavens. After seeing the divine tower, Qin Yu's eyes shone brightly. Sure enough, the Fire Emperor's inheritance was here. Of course, looking at those people in sky-blue robes, it was obvious that they had discovered the divine tower long ago. He just didn't know if they had obtained the Fire Emperor's inheritance. Chapter 794. When Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul sneaked into the sky-shrouding sun-changing formation and looked at the divine pagoda. Outside the divine pagoda, 20 to 30 figures with shocking auras were carefully setting up the formation. The 3 people in the lead were a one-eyed man, an old man, and a young man. The one-eyed man was in the middle position and was obviously the leader of the 3. The old man looked wrinkled and lethargic. There was no sign of life in him at all, as if he could die at any moment. The young man was too young, and his face was red and full of vitality. When the two stood together, it gave people a strong sense of contradiction. It looks like we'll be able to completely break the restriction of the divine pagoda in half a year. The wrinkled and lethargic Jiu Tiankan looked at the progress of breaking the restriction with a smile on his face. His turbid eyes were also filled with excitement. After all, they were breaking a treasure land that contained the inheritance of the great emperor of ancient. If this news were to spread, the entire fire domain would be shocked. I don't know what happened to the fire god palace in the past few days. They sent out countless experts to scout around the fire domain. We have to hurry up just in case. The young man, Zhu Guxiao, frowned. These days, the fire god palace's movements made him feel uneasy. According to the fire god palace's speed, it was very likely that they would discover their movements. Even if we want to be fast, there's no other way. The inheritance of the Ice Sword sect is in conflict with the flame restriction of the divine pagoda. Jiu Tiankan smiled bitterly. They also wanted to break the restriction as soon as possible to avoid any unexpected changes. However, the restriction left behind by the great emperor of ancient could be triggered with the slightest carelessness. They had to be careful. At this moment, the one-eyed man, who had been silent all this time, suddenly exclaimed, "Eldest senior brother, what's wrong?" Zhu Guxiao and Jiu Tiankan both looked at the master of the Ice Sword sect, Tang Zhengwu, who was also their senior brother. The restriction of the divine pagoda seems to be a little different. Tang Zhengwu looked over and carefully sensed it. Buzz. Buzz. At this moment, the ancient restriction in the divine pagoda suddenly trembled. Soon after, countless ancient flame runes emerged from the divine tower. A vast and boundless emperor aura swept out, shaking everything within a radius of millions of miles. Even the primordial divine array could not conceal it. What happened? The restriction was triggered. Tang Zhengwu, Jiu Tiankan, and Zhu Guxiao's expressions changed drastically. They immediately stepped forward. "Sect Master, we didn't trigger the restriction. What should we do? Should we evacuate first?" The experts of the Ice Sword sect all gathered together, looking at the divine pagoda surrounded by fiery runes, cautiously guarding against it. The restriction ancient runes left behind by the Primeval emperors. If something went wrong, they would all be buried here. We didn't trigger it. Could it be? When Tang Zhengwu and the other two heard this, they looked at each other and saw through each other's thoughts. It couldn't be that someone had snuck in, right? Rumble. Almost in the next instant, 100-meter-tall pillar of flame shot up into the sky from the top of the divine tower. The sky-shrouding sun-changing formation was directly destroyed, and the pillar of flame shot up into the sky, shaking the thousands of races in the fire domain. A figure rushed out from the top of the divine pagoda where flames were soaring into the sky. It was Qin Yu, who had tried to sneak into the divine tower with the yin-yang escape talisman. Qin Yu, whose blood and qi were boiling from the impact of the huge pillar of flame, couldn't help but grin. If it weren't for the fact that he had a lot of trump cards, he would have died the moment he was hit. As expected of the inheritance of the Fire Emperor, the slightest carelessness would have killed him. Who is that? When the people of the Ice Sword sect saw Qin Yu appear, they were all startled. They couldn't react in time. As expected. Someone has snuck in. Damn it. How dare you ruin the plan of the Ice Sword sect? Tang Zhengwu, Zhu Guxiao, and Jiu Tiansan's expressions were dark, and their eyes were cold. Whoosh. Whoosh. With the slightest hesitation, the three of them immediately rushed out, and a bone-chilling sword qi swept out. That terrifying sword qi also contained endless cold qi that was enough to freeze the 9 heavens and 10 earths. As the three of them rushed out, the air in this area was faintly frozen. The experts of the Ice Sword sect finally reacted, and their killing intent surged as they madly rushed out. They had painstakingly prepared for so many years, and were about to succeed, but in the end, it was ruined halfway. How could they not be angry? An early heavenly ethereal stage, and 2 peak heavenly gods. Qin Yu, who was thinking about how to sneak in again, sensed the cold sword qi rapidly approaching, and turned his head to look. Although Qin Yu's cultivation was still only at the heavenly venerate stage, He, who had experienced the void domain battle, wasn't very interested in Tang Zhengwu and the other two who were rushing over murderously. Dragon soul. Qin Yu muttered in his heart. Immediately, with Qin Yu as the center, waves started to appear in the void. Layers upon layers of spatial energy started to spread out. Tang Zhengwu and the other two's Ice Sword Dao secret magics were annihilated before they could even get close to Qin Yu. They didn't cause the slightest injury to Qin Yu. Spatial magics? No, it seems to be able to affect time. This guy has mastered the power of time and space. Tang Zhengwu and the other two were greatly shocked. They didn't underestimate Qin Yu because of his heavenly venerate stage cultivation base, and immediately attacked with their secret magics. Formless Sword Dao. Blue Sparrow soars. Ice seals the 9 heavens. This time, they were clearly really angry. Their incomparably violent Ice Sword Dao whistled and swept out with terrifying might, as if 3 ancient gods of death had come to the world. Heaven battling divine formation. Qin Yu was indifferent. He had the confidence to be indifferent. With a thought, an ancient and mysterious grand formation immediately spread out in the sky. It was the Battle Tribe's clan protection grand formation that he had brought with him. After the battle at the Battle God Temple, no one in the Void Zone dared to cause trouble for the Battle Tribe. Thus, Qin Yu decided to borrow this ancient formation array. After all, Qin Yu was going to deal with the Fire God Palace, the overlord of the Void Zone. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. After the heaven battling divine formation appeared, it released billions of rays of divine battle intent, which directly shattered Tang Zhengwu and the other two's attacks. What kind of formation is this? Such powerful battle intent. It contains the immortal aura of a martial emperor. Could this also be an ancient killing formation refined by a great emperor? The Tang Zhengwu trio, who were charging over, could feel an extremely powerful fighting intent pressing down on them. It was as though even the entire world was being suppressed. This caused the expressions of the 3 of them to become extremely serious. Dragon God dominating body, ancient spirit of the god of battle, appear. Glancing at Tang Zhengwu and the other 2 who had joined forces and assumed defensive postures, Qin Yu's hands formed a seal. The ancient spirit of the god of battle in the heaven battling divine formation was immediately awakened and strengthened by him, emitting boundless divine power. What kind of secret technique is this? The expressions of Tang Zhengwu and the other 2, who were wearing grave expressions, suddenly changed. They couldn't imagine what kind of supreme secret technique could allow a heavenly venerate to instantly raise his cultivation to the heavenly ethereal realm. Chaotic Dragon Spear, kill. Qin Yu yelled. The chaotic dragon spear covered in chaotic chi shook the void and turned into a ray of chaotic divine light, shooting across the sky at an extremely fast speed. Whoosh! A sharp tearing sound was heard. Tang Zhengwu and the other 2 were severely injured and were sent flying while vomiting blood. Qin Yu's spear not only contained the power of the ancient spirit of the god of battle, but also the chaotic killing technique of the primal chaos ancestor dragon. The power of the 2 was destructive. Secret technique, space splitting. The dragon soul wasn't just watching a show. As it executed the secret technique of time and space, pitch-black spatial cracks appeared around Zhu Guxiao and Jiyu Tiancan, who were severely injured. Before the 2 of them could react, they were torn apart by the pitch-black spatial cracks. Tang Zhengwu had luckily escaped with his powerful strength, but he was also severely injured. Chapter 795. Secret Spacetime Technique. This person is invincible. I have to run. Tang Zhengwu, whose face was pale and his breathing chaotic, was terrified. Without thinking, he immediately broke through the void and fled. A mere heavenly venerable realm cultivator was able to unleash the power of a heavenly ethereal realm expert and master the secret spacetime technique. No matter how one looked at it, he didn't seem like a normal person. Could it be that Qin Yu was the reincarnation of an old monster? Sect Master? Why are you still standing there? Run! Seeing that even Tang Zhengwu had died in such a miserable state, the experts from the Ice Sword sect, who had arrived with a murderous aura, naturally did not dare to stay any longer as they scattered and fled in all directions. Killing 2 peak heavenly gods in one move and frightening a heavenly ethereal realm expert, they would only be seeking their own deaths if they rushed forward. However, Qin Yu did not chase after them. Those people from the Ice Sword sect. He once again raised his head and looked at the Raging Flames divine pagoda that was filled with divine flames. With such a big commotion, there was no doubt that all the major forces in the fire field would be alerted. He had to enter the divine tower before those big forces arrived. Otherwise, when the big forces of the fire field arrived, it wouldn't be so easy for him to get his hands on it. Thinking of this, Qin Yu flew into the sky and appeared at the top of the divine tower, approaching the towering pillar of fire. You want to barge in through the pillar of fire? The dragon soul appeared and looked at the pillar of fire. From the pillar of fire, he felt an extremely destructive power. If he barged in directly, his life would be in danger. If Qin Yu hadn't reacted quickly, he wouldn't have been simply blown away by the pillar of fire. The restriction array at the entrance of the divine tower is a bit strange. Even the yin-yang escape talisman can't enter. It should require a special secret technique. If I want to enter directly, this is the only way. Qin Yu naturally knew that sneaking in through the pillar of fire from the top of the tower was extremely dangerous, but he didn't have a better way now. Thinking of this, Qin Yu used the green dragon battle the heavens and entered the dragon god tyrant body. The dragon soul used the space-time ability to affect the space around Qin Yu. Plop! After finishing his preparations, Qin Yu's figure flashed and entered the pillar of flame. The fire power contained in that flaming light pillar was indeed extremely terrifying. Even though Qin Yu was fully equipped, he still felt the blood in his body boiling, as if it was about to combust. Buzz, buzz, buzz. And just as Qin Yu was about to be unable to bear the destructive power of the fire, the faint flame mark in his dantian suddenly trembled. Immediately after, Qin Yu felt a trace of a special aura spread out from within his body and seeped into his limbs and bones. You want to control me? Qin Yu's expression changed slightly. Strands of special soul power surged out from the flame imprint, as if it wanted to control him. Qin Yu was no stranger to that special soul power. It was Huojiang, who had told him the location of the Fire Emperor's inheritance and helped him refine the vast sky divine flame. It seemed that Huojiang of the Fire Spirit tribe did not have good intentions. Qin Yu's eyes revealed a cold smile. He was not a little brat who did not know anything. Back when he was refining the vast sky divine flame, he had already left a trick up his sleeve. When the wisps of smoke-like soul power seeped into his sea of soul, a vast and boundless immortal pressure suddenly descended. Stop, accompanied by a miserable cry, the soul power that seeped into his sea of soul immediately melted like snow in spring, quickly disappearing. Qin Yu's eyes flashed coldly. He had the war dragon coil, the immortal refining cauldron, the immortal slaying painting, the immortal subduing palace, and other immortal treasures. A mere remnant soul dared to possess him. It was tired of living. After destroying the wisps of remnant soul, Qin Yu clearly felt that the destructive power contained in the pillar of flame seemed to be less unbearable. Qin Yu could feel that the faint flame mark exuded a special aura fluctuation, which seemed to be able to suppress the destructive power in the pillar of flame. This made Qin Yu's face brighten up. He immediately seized the opportunity and quickly sneaked into the divine tower. Rumble. When Qin Yu followed the pillar of flame and sneaked into the divine tower, the void in the distance shook. A black chariot pulled by a three-headed blood dragon flew through the air, exuding a vast and mighty aura. Obviously, it had a great background. However, when it was about 100 feet away from the divine tower, the three-headed blood dragon trembled in fear and did not dare to take another step forward. It's the Emperor pressure. Could it be that the ancient Emperor's fortune is hidden in this place? No, I have been here before. It was not like this at all, and there was no divine tower. It seems that there is a great secret hidden in this place. Let's go down and have a look. Figures with astonishing auras appeared in the chariot and looked at the divine tower in shock. The vast and boundless Emperor pressure was definitely the supreme Emperor pressure of the ancient Emperor. When they thought that there might be the ancient Emperor's fortune, they were extremely excited and immediately flew over. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. At this moment, another major force flew over. When they saw that someone was approaching, they immediately flew over as they were afraid that someone would take the initiative. After that, The major forces that were closer to the divine tower gathered and the scene was lively. Of course, when they arrived, they were all trapped by the restrictions of the divine tower. When their attacks were ineffective, they immediately went to ask for help from the array masters of the fire domain. Boom! Around half an hour later, a blazing flame tore through the sky like a meteor. Its speed was incredibly fast. That is, the fire god palace. The major forces of the fire domain that were working together to break through the restrictions of the divine tower's entrance were shocked when they felt the terrifying heat wave that was as hot as the sun. When they saw the sign of the people who had arrived, their faces changed drastically. The people who had arrived were the experts of the fire god palace. The leader was the palace master of the fire god palace, Duan Chihua. Beside Duan Chihua was the deputy palace master, Shui Yu. One was very likely to be the inheritance of the ancient emperor. Even the fire god palace was extremely tempted. It is indeed the emperor pressure. When they felt the vast emperor pressure from the divine tower, Duan Chihua and Shui Yu's faces lit up. They immediately led the experts of the fire god palace over. In front of the inheritance of the ancient emperor, tracking down Qin Yu and Duan Chihua was insignificant. Palace Master Duan. Deputy Palace Master Shui. The major forces of the fire domain nodded. Sect Master Li. Sect Master Ju. Master Wu. Duan Chihua, who had reached the heavenly ethereal realm and had become the palace master of the fire god palace, also smiled and greeted the major forces around him. However, in reality, the major forces present all knew that he was a smiling tiger. He was smiling on the surface, but he was merciless behind the scenes. Ever since the Fire God Palace's patriarch had gone into seclusion and Duan Chihua had taken charge of the Fire God Palace, the Fire God Palace had massacred countless clans and sects. Chapter 796. What's wrong? Could it be that you can't enter the godly tower? Duan Chihua walked to the front of the godly tower and looked at the array masters who were trying their best to break the restrictions. Palace Master Duan, you've come at the right time. You're also an array master. Take a look and see if the restrictions on the godly tower are the legendary emperor runes. One of the array masters clasped his fists at Duan Chihua. To be honest, I've never seen a real emperor rune before. Duan Chihua smiled and walked up to take a closer look. After all, the last ancient emperor realm expert in the fire domain had been tens of thousands of years ago. After looking for a while, Duan Chihua's smile faded and his gaze turned serious. The stronger one's attainments in the Tao of formations were, the more profound the restriction at the entrance of the divine tower was. Most importantly, one needed to have a high attainment in array Tao and a strong cultivation to break the restrictions. One had to be stronger than the heavenly ethereal realm. This made Duan Chihua's expression turn serious, but his heart was filled with joy. It was very likely that such a profound formation was a true emperor rune. At this moment, Qin Yu, who had sneaked into the godly tower along the fire pillar, finally entered the godly tower. The first thing that entered his eyes was a giant flaming figure that was at least 1,000 feet tall. It emitted a vast aura, and beside the flaming figure were raging flames. A supreme divine aura that could shake the 9 heavens and 10 earths was constantly emitted, causing one's heart to tremble. Fire Emperor! Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul did not react to the Emperor aura, or rather, they were not affected at all. After all, they had seen existences of a higher level. Whether it was Zhong Wuji of the War Tribe, the Yin-Yang God, or the Ancestor Demon statue, none of them were weaker than the Tao Fire. Not to mention the supreme inheritance that Qin Yu had obtained, the inheritance left behind by the War Dragon Immortal King. Finally, someone's here. As Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul sneaked in, an ancient voice suddenly sounded. This figure was Qin Yu and his soul. His expression suddenly froze and he immediately became vigilant. However, he did not discover where the ancient voice came from. Knowledge was knowledge, but if they were facing a true sovereign spirit of the reaching heaven realm, they still had to be vigilant. In the current fire domain, the patriarch of the Fire God Palace, who dominated the fire domain, was only at the exceptional heavenly ethereal realm. At most, he was half a step into the heavenly palace realm. He definitely had not entered the heavenly palace realm. Otherwise, Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul wouldn't have been able to escape from the hands of the Fire God Palace's old ancestor. And between the heavenly ethereal realm and the heavenly connecting Emperor realm, there was still the heavenly palace realm. Heaven Void realm, Heaven Palace realm, Heaven Connecting realm, these three great realms, every small realm difference would result in a huge difference in strength. Therefore, even if it was just a sovereign spirit of the ancient Emperor of Tongtian, it was enough to crush heavenly ethereal stage and even heavenly palace stage. Of course, the exact strength would depend on how much power that martial monarch spirit still possessed. Hey, you guys aren't from the Dragon Clan. Why do you have the dragon bloodline and dragon soul? That ancient voice sounded again, and a figure slowly appeared from within the giant flame silhouette. It was a middle-aged man wearing linen clothes. He didn't look very impressive. But his eyes were extremely terrifying. They seemed to contain endless changes of stars, as if the heavens were being born and destroyed. It made people sink into them with just a glance. Senior Fire Emperor. Seeing that the Emperor spirit didn't seem to have any evil intentions, Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul looked at each other and bowed. Not only do you have the dragon bloodline, but you also have immortal chi fluctuations. It seems like you guys are people with great luck. The more the Fire Emperor spirit looked at Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul, the more surprised he was. Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul were even more shocked. The Fire Emperor spirit's gaze seemed to be penetrating and could see through all their secrets. The heavens really don't open their eyes. It took so long for a successor to pass the restriction test. After looking at Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul, the Fire Emperor spirit let out a deep sigh. His voice was filled with unconcealable regret. Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul's hearts skipped a beat when they heard this. The two of them didn't enter through the restriction at the entrance. This godly flame pillar is also one of the tests, but the method is different. The entrance can only be triggered by fate, while the godly flame pillar depends on one's talent and strength. The Fire Emperor's spirit saw through Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul's thoughts and said directly, "Does that mean that we can obtain Senior's inheritance now?" Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul let out a sigh of relief and asked, "Of course. Those who obtain my inheritance are considered my disciples, but I'm already dead and my soul is about to dissipate. This rule is useless. I only hope that you can pass the monarch battlefield in the future." The Fire Emperor's spirit nodded and said, "Monarch battlefield? What's that place?" Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul asked when they heard this. At the end of the 10 Directions world is the monarch battlefield. Only those who pass the monarch battlefield can ignite the godly flame and step into a higher level of the divine path. The Fire Emperor spirit said, "Back then, I was severely injured in the monarch battlefield. In the end, I had to pass away and let my main soul enter the 6 paths in hopes of reincarnation. Ignite the godly flame? Step into the immortal realm? What's going on? Isn't the ancient god realm a separate martial path?" Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul were shocked. They had always thought that the ancient god realm wasn't part of the martial path system. It was a path created by the person who had no hope of becoming an immortal. But now, it seemed that this wasn't the case. Of course, more importantly, the monarch battlefield was extremely dangerous to be able to injure the heavenly ancient emperor to the point of passing away. There was actually such a dangerous place in the 10 Directions world. This had also surpassed Qin Yu's expectations. His spirit body seems to have been born with your origin source soul force. Therefore, I will pass my inheritance to you and you will both benefit from it. If one day, you can ignite the godly flame in the monarch battlefield, I hope you can find a suitable person to pass on my inheritance." As the Fire Emperor's spirit finished speaking, spots of flame light appeared on his body. The flame light surged into Qin Yu's body, causing Qin Yu's entire body to be covered in a layer of hazy flame light. At the same time, the Dragon Soul's body trembled slightly as fire runes spread out from its body. Both of them were immersed in a mysterious state. The Tao of heaven and earth was incomparably clear. Sky Saint Realm, Sky God Realm, Sky Ethereal Realm, Sky Palace Realm, Sky Ascension Realm. Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul had yet to enter the martial path. The mysteries of the martial path were broken down by a mysterious method and appeared in their minds very easily. Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul immediately understood. The inheritance of the Fire Emperor's spirit, in addition to the Fire Dao's origin source secret technique, was his comprehension of the martial path. All of it was clearly transmitted into their minds. Although this would not allow their cultivations to directly reach a higher level, it would allow their future martial path to be smooth sailing. Boom! After about half an hour, Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul retreated from the mysterious state. There was also an incomparably powerful aura that swept out from their bodies. Their cultivation had officially entered the Sky Saint realm. Chapter 797. Rumble. When Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul obtained the Fire Emperor's inheritance and entered the Sky Saint realm, the originally indestructible barrier at the entrance of the Divine Tower suddenly exploded. Powerful shockwaves swept out, forcing everyone to take a step back. Their faces were filled with shock. The barrier broke on its own. Could it be? Duan Qihua, who was thinking of ways to break the barrier, was shocked and quickly retreated. The barrier of the Divine Tower was definitely left behind by a sky-piercing Emperor Realm elite. Even with his array skills, he couldn't do anything about it. But now, the indestructible ancient barrier had broken. This made Duan Qihua think of a possibility. Let's go. Of course, some things had to be seen with their own eyes. Duan Qihua immediately rushed into the Divine Tower, followed by Shen Yu and the other Fire God Palace elites. The other experts of the fire field who had gathered naturally would not miss this opportunity. They swarmed over as well. The fortune this time is really not small. In the center of the Divine Tower, Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul, who had regained their senses, let out a sigh of relief. Their eyes were clear and bright. They were clear about their future martial realms. From now on, there would be no obstacles on their path of cultivation. They could go all the way in one go. Rumble. Suddenly, there was a violent explosion. The ancient door in the center of the Divine Tower was forcefully blasted open. Figures with powerful auras rushed in. The person in the lead was naturally the Palace Master of the Fire God Palace, Duan Qihua. Behind him was the Vice Palace Master Shui Yu and the other elders of the Fire God Palace. Behind them were the various factions of the Fire Domain. Someone has beaten us to it. Duan Qihua, who had previously guessed, looked at Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul with a cold, murderous look in his eyes. He could feel that the fluctuations coming from Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul were very similar to the flames in the Divine Tower. They obviously came from the same source. Now, the Great Emperor's inheritance in the Divine Tower had been obtained by Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul. It's you. Enemies really do meet on a narrow road. I've been looking for you everywhere, but it turns out that you're here. Behind Duan Qihua, Shen Yu's pupils shrank. He was extremely familiar with Qin Yu's appearance, and that aura was something that he would never forget. If it wasn't for Qin Yu, the ancient Li Fire Dragon cultivated by the Fire God Palace wouldn't have gone berserk. And from the looks of it, it was very likely that the inheritance of the Great Emperor had already been obtained by Qin Yu. This caused the killing intent in Shen Yu's heart to grow even stronger. Just as well, new and old debts could be settled together. Their auras. Did they obtain the inheritance of the Divine Pagoda? Two mere quintessential saint stage powerhouses dare to lay their hands on such an inheritance. You're courting death. The large factions from the Fire Domain who had followed them also immediately noticed Qin Yu and Lin Dong. They sized them up with unconcealable disdain in their eyes. In front of them, let alone two Sky Saint stage powerhouses, even two Heavenly Deity stage powerhouses were nothing to them. Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul, who were being stared at by the crowd, did not feel uncomfortable at all. Instead, they were calm. They had seen many higher cultivation realms, and the people in front of them were nothing to them. Although there were a few heavenly ethereal realm powerhouses present, Qin Yu was not afraid of them. Kai. Suddenly, Qin Yu sensed an extremely subtle fluctuation. Qin Yu, who had merged with the Fire Emperor's inheritance, had a deep understanding of the higher cultivation realms. Including some martial Dao operations, none of it could escape his eyes. Using such despicable means is a disgrace to the name of the Fire God Palace. Qin Yu did not say anything, and the chaotic dragon spear appeared. He flicked the tip of the spear and dispersed all the fluctuations in the dark. Xian Yu, who had secretly attacked with a secret technique to suppress Qin Yu, suddenly retreated with a muffled groan. A trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. At the same time, his eyes widened in disbelief. There was a huge difference between different cultivation realms. Not to mention the difference of two cultivation realms, even if there was only a slight difference, it would be like a natural chasm. It would be fine if he was only discovered by Qin Yu, but Qin Yu had injured him with a single move. It was impossible for someone of the same cultivation realm to do so. You have stepped into the heavenly ethereal realm? No, my senses are definitely not wrong. You are indeed only in the heavenly saint stage, Xian Yu said in disbelief. He could not believe that he was injured by Qin Yu. One should know that the current Qin Yu was different from before. He did not lay down an ancient array to help him. He has control over the Divine Tower's Great Emperor's inheritance. Duan Qihua narrowed his eyes and said slowly, "The Great Emperor's inheritance is indeed hidden here. A heavenly ethereal realm powerhouse can actually injure a heavenly ethereal realm powerhouse. This ability is too terrifying." Many people from the various forces had entered. When they heard what Duan Qihua said, they all stared at Qin Yu with burning eyes as if they were looking at a peerless treasure that was hard to come by in 10,000 years. The inheritance of a great emperor was not something that could only be seen once every 10,000 years. Even in 100 million years, one might not be able to see the tomb of a great emperor. No one knew who took the lead, but everyone blurted out words to suppress Duan Qihua. Hand over the Fire Emperor's inheritance. All the major forces of the fire domain are here. It's better to hand over the Fire Emperor's inheritance quickly. The Divine Fire Sect is willing to accept you. Why don't you come quickly? We can promise you the position of an elder. In an instant, some people tried to persuade Duan Qihua, and some even tried to recruit him by promising him the position of an elder. Qin Yu rejected them without hesitation. As he had expected, regardless of whether they were trying to coerce or bribe him, the only goal of the major forces was the Fire Emperor's inheritance. You don't know what's good for you. All the major forces of the fire domain are here. Do you know how powerful we are if we join forces? Seeing that Qin Yu was indifferent, some people's faces turned ferocious and murderous. Just nice. I'll use you to test my power. Now. Qin Yu sneered and shouted in a low voice. Whoosh. Unknowingly, bursts of flames suddenly ignited within the divine pagoda, and silently fell down. Wherever the silent flames passed, the ground would be scorched black and mottled. To be able to leave scorched black marks in the divine tower, one could imagine how high the temperature of the flames was. If it landed on a human body, it would be extremely powerful. Everyone in the fire domain was a fire expert. With just a glance, they could see the level of power represented by the flames. It was a level that most of the people present could not reach. It was the peak of the heavenly ethereal realm. The inheritance that Qin Yu had received was not just martial arts experience. It also included the ownership of the divine tower. The flames were just one of the many. Its special feature was that it could be activated with one's own strength, and it could display strength that was higher than 2 realms. Although it's only at the peak of the heavenly ethereal realm, it's enough to deal with you. Duan Qihua suddenly felt a strong sense of uneasiness in his heart. It was as if something extremely terrifying was about to happen. Quick, retreat. Everyone, retreat from the divine tower. He had already realized that the flames would only stay within the divine tower. However, his reminder was too late. Before anyone could retreat, they were already enveloped by the flames. A leader of a major force who had stepped into the heavenly ethereal realm went forward to test the flames, attempting to break the cage of flames. However, just as he stretched out his hand, it was burned by the powerful flames. If he had not retracted his hand quickly enough, his entire hand would have been destroyed. Duan Qihua's face was gloomy and extremely ugly. With such a powerful strength, he won't be able to hold on for long. We should take advantage of this time to capture him as soon as possible. However, the reality was the opposite. The people who were encouraged by his words all rushed forward, but they were all defeated. Phoenix transformation. Boundless heavenly fire. All of the people who rushed up were more or less seriously injured. After catching their own people, they did not care about the fact that the Fire God Palace was the #1 force in the fire domain and surrounded them angrily. Before they could do anything, there was a sudden change. Screams of agony rang out one after another. Chapter 798. Suddenly, the fire grew stronger and engulfed everyone in it. Whether it was those who were about to attack or those who had just attacked but were defeated, all of them were covered in flames. Cries of agony could be heard. The blood-curdling screams rang out continuously. Even some of the top experts who were confident in their strength couldn't help but feel a little flustered. Roar. Immediately after, the originally chaotic and sporadic flames suddenly condensed together, forming an ancient divine dragon. Although the people from the fire territory and other top forces had gathered and attacked together, they were powerless against the gigantic fire dragon. Qin Yu waved his finger gently and the tail of the fire dragon dissipated for a moment. Indeed, it's a little too much for a quintessential saint to perform such precise maneuvers. However, it's enough to deal with all of you, Dragon Soul. The Dragon Soul, who had been waiting by the side, could not wait to charge out. He was already unhappy with these people. The moment the Dragon Soul appeared, he used his space-time ability to wreak havoc. In just a few breaths' time, there were a few fresh corpses on the floor of the God's Pagoda. The top forces who were already at odds with each other showed their weakness in the face of danger. You push me, I push you. They would rather others die than let their own people get hurt. Flames shot out of Duan Chihua's eyes. He suddenly shouted and used all his strength to disperse the flames around him. You're just SOSO. As soon as he finished his words, he met the Dragon Soul's gaze. Although it was just a quintessential Saint Realm Dragon Soul, he could see the vastness of the universe in its eyes. Just as he was in a state of shock, the situation around him suddenly changed. It was as though he was the only one left in the world. Everyone was distancing themselves from him. It was as though he was the only one left in the world. No, there was still the Dragon Soul. It was the space-time illusory realm. Duan Chihua finally understood that it was the power of space-time. The power of space-time was so profound that it was almost impossible for him to touch it at his cultivation level. However, he actually saw such powerful control of space-time in a quintessential saint realm. No wonder you could steal the ancient dragon's blood essence and increase your strength again in such a short time. You really have something to rely on. The Dragon Soul snorted in disdain as its deep gaze landed on the palace master of the Fire God Palace. Although they were in the void virtual world, they were still in the space of the godly pagoda. Duan Chihua's cultivation was suppressed, so the Dragon Soul was naturally not afraid. Rumble. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had already started fighting in this space-time ethereal world. Qin Yu's opponent was Vice Palace Master Shui Yu. Shui Yu's expression was solemn. So what if Qin Yu was only at the quintessential saint stage? With the help of various divine abilities, he was no longer weaker than him. In fact, he was even slightly stronger. It's time to settle the score with you for stealing the ancient dragon blood essence from the Fire God Palace. Before the voice of the celestial realm had even faded, they had already made their move. Fire God's Palm. The Fire God's Palm was his most exquisite divine ability. It was also one of the best divine arts in the entire Fire God Palace. In the entire fire domain, there were only a handful of people who could comprehend this exquisite martial art. Shui Yu was the one who had cultivated this martial art to the peak. He had purposely made his move before he had finished his words. He wanted to catch Qin Yu off guard. However, his palm strike, which was filled with confidence, missed. Unknowingly, Qin Yu was already standing behind him. Fire God's Palm? Why don't you try the Fire God's Palm that I have modified? How could the inheritance of a great emperor be so simple? Of course, the most important thing was the experience of martial arts. However, there were many other miscellaneous martial arts as well. When Shui Yu made his move, Shui Yu had already determined where his attack would land. He then made use of his ingenious positioning to arrive behind Shui Yu in an instant. It was the same Fire God's Palm. Qin Yu struck out with his palm. The palm print rose with the wind. As the flames on the palm print gradually expanded, it formed a force that was as heavy as Mount Tai. Shui Yu had nowhere to hide. He had no choice but to take the blow head-on. Phut! A mouthful of blood spurted out like a sharp sword. After spitting out this mouthful of blood, Shui Yu's face turned ashen. His aura was more than 20% weaker than before. This did not include the injuries on his body. This palm strike contained the ancient flames that had been stored in the godly pagoda for hundreds of thousands of years. Even if it was just a tiny bit, it was not something that Shui Yu could resist. The flames would constantly burn his organs. If he did not obtain any treasures, he would definitely lose his life in less than half a month. During this process, he would suffer immense pain. He would not be able to rest in peace day and night. Dragon soul, come back. Stop playing. At this moment, the ground inside the godly pagoda was covered in a layer of sticky blood. After hearing the call, the dragon soul immediately retracted its divine power. Its figure flashed across space and arrived behind Qin Yu. Duan Qihua could not do anything to the dragon soul. Although he could protect himself, it was also frustrating to be trapped in an isolated space. He had just found a weak point in space and was about to break it. Suddenly, the divine power that trapped him disappeared without a trace. He was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Now, it's time to end this. Shui Yu was already a cripple. As long as he went up and dealt another blow, he would be finished. The remaining palace master of the Fire God Palace was not a concern. Those who were still alive were uneasy. They looked at the two figures outside the sea of fire with fear in their eyes. Curses and begging could be heard. Qin Yu slowly clenched his fist. The fire dragon that had been hovering above their heads suddenly rushed down. Keep. This time, no one was able to escape. Suddenly, there was a thick layer of dust on the ground. Only a few powerful people, such as Duan Qihua and Shui Yu, were still struggling to hold on. If you kill me, you will become the enemy of the entire Fire God Palace. Is that so? Qin Yu suddenly flipped his hand and formed a hand seal. He then said a word with an ancient tone, explode. At this point, no matter if it was the palace master of the Fire God Palace or the people from the other forces in the Inferno prison, they were all dead. As long as they stepped into the divine tower and coveted the inheritance, none of them were left alive. Those who stayed outside the divine tower only saw a vast ancient dragon rushing out from the blazing fire. They saw that the place that was supposed to be crowded with people was now empty. There were only charred marks left. At the same time, an old man who was sitting inside the Fire God Palace suddenly opened his eyes. There seemed to be endless divine power flowing in his eyes. Suddenly, he looked at the direction of the divine tower. With a wave of his long robe, he disappeared in a flash. Qin Yu, who had just finished the battle, did not even have the time to collect his spoils of war. In the void, there was a surge of clouds. A figure appeared and rushed into the divine tower at a speed that no one could capture. The people guarding outside the tower all felt the powerful pressure, and none of them dared to move in the slightest. However, Qin Yu and the dragon soul in the divine tower were not affected at all. They just looked at the person calmly. Chapter 799. However, his voice was heard before he even saw him. You were lucky enough to escape last time. I didn't expect you to return to the fire domain. Along with the voice came a towering aura. Those standing outside the divine pagoda were only slightly affected. They covered their chests and vomited. Blood dyed their clothes red and they ran as far as they could. However, the two figures in the divine pagoda weren't affected at all. Their eyes were still calm, but there was a hint of understanding in them. So, it's the Fire God Palace's Laozu. I was wondering who it was. Bullying us from afar. You are indeed the Fire God Palace's Laozu. Qin Yu sneered as he recalled the time when he was chased by the Fire God Palace's Laozu. The Fire God Palace's Laozu, who had just arrived, was furious. He didn't even see who said that. He waved his sleeve and a bright flame appeared. Sparks flickered and danced. It was as though the surrounding air was about to be burned up. However, such a flame was child's play in front of the divine pagoda's ancient fire. Qin Yu followed the inheritance memory and formed a complicated hand seal. The flames that were originally attacking him were now docilely held in his palm. Then, he casually tossed it into the ancient flame, allowing it to be swallowed up. Although the flame was nothing in front of the ancient fire, it was a sacred fire with great potential that the Laozu had been searching for a long time. The flame was only 10,000 years old, but it already possessed great strength. As long as it was given more time, the small flame would definitely grow to a more powerful stage. The Laozu was frustrated that he had lost the sacred fire that he had painstakingly searched for without even seeing the person clearly. Although he didn't spit out blood, it was still painful. Emperor weapon. After seeing the divine pagoda clearly, the Laozu couldn't help but have greed in his eyes. He also deduced what had happened from the marks on the ground. Hand over the Fire Emperor's inheritance and I'll let bygones be bygones. As the Fire God Palace's Laozu spoke, he unleashed the terrifying aura of a heavenly palace realm. Even though he was just standing there, the surrounding space seemed to be unstable and produced powerful airwaves. However, the situation that the old ancestor had imagined did not happen. In his opinion, the junior who was merely at the quintessential saint stage did not show him any respect at all. With the old and new grudges added together, the old ancestor had already made his move. Heavenly Fire's descent. Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul cooperated with each other, activating the imperial might of the divine pagoda while setting up the heavenly god battle formation. I don't care what kind of sacred flame you are. Since you are in front of me, you better submit obediently. When the formation was set up, the patriarch suddenly felt a fatal danger. Just as he was about to escape, the surrounding time and space suddenly changed. Ripples that were hard to see with the naked eye trapped him in the formation. A quintessential saint that should have been weak to the point of being easily crushed actually had such powerful strength. One had to know that he had already stepped into the heavenly palace. Do you think a small formation can trap me? Too naive. All of a sudden, the old ancestor of the Fire God Palace exploded with a powerful force. The powerful energy waves caused all kinds of strange phenomena. Thick fog rose and turned into an azure dragon, or the faint silhouette of an immortal. The celestial palace realm was not something that could be destroyed so easily. However, the heavenly god battle formation was not an ordinary formation. Even though it was shaken by the powerful force, it was still stable. However, if he wanted to destroy the heavenly palace stage in one fell swoop, he still had to add fuel to the fire. Qin Yu quickly searched through his inherited memories. When he found it, his hands began to move. Summon. It was still a simple and boundless syllable. It was as if the voice did not come from someone's mouth, but from an almighty from the ancient times. Divine fire. The real divine fire was a bright golden color. It was the fire seed left behind by the Fire Emperor. The bright and powerful divine fire was integrated into the formation. Inside the formation, the old ancestor of the Fire God Palace let out an extremely tragic cry. Suddenly, he turned into ashes. The power of the divine fire surprised Qin Yu. It was faster than he had expected. Even a heavenly palace stage could not last long under the power of the divine fire. As soon as it touched the divine fire, it turned into ashes in the blink of an eye. After the dragon soul checked, it suddenly walked over and said, the old ancestor of the Fire God Palace had a backup plan. It was not his original body that came. Not his original body? It's okay. Let's kill our way up. Since you and I have just broken through, we need some treasures to consolidate our realms and level up again. If someone had heard of this earlier, they would have laughed their heads off. They had just leveled up, especially in the quintessential martial sage realm. How difficult would it be to break through again? For most people, to be able to find the opportunity to break through again within 1,000 years, they were already the cream of the crop. Although it was not the original body of the old ancestor of the Fire God Palace, it was still his important spiritual body. If the spiritual body was turned into ashes, the original body would be severely injured. It would not be able to recover in a short period of time. Qin Yu brought the dragon soul and rushed out of the divine pagoda. All that was left to the people who were guarding outside the divine pagoda was his back view. In the sacred ground of the Fire God Palace, an old man with a sage-like demeanor spat out a mouthful of blood. With a wave of his hand, the blood disappeared without a trace. If it wasn't for his slightly pale face, no one would be able to tell that he had just spat out his heart's blood, which was extremely important to the martial Tao. Since when could a quintessential saint realm fight against a heaven palace realm expert and even kill him? The more the old ancestor thought about it, the more fearful he got. He frowned as he thought about the details of the battle. It should be the inheritance of the Fire Emperor. After all, he is a great emperor of the heaven-reaching realm. It's not strange for him to have such means. With this thought, the old ancestor of the Fire God Palace was about to stand up. Suddenly, he slipped and fell to the ground. This was something that he would never have dared to think about in the past. That was a heaven palace realm expert. He was only one step away from the pinnacle of the realm. How could he fall on flat ground? However, the spiritual body of the old ancestor of the Fire God Palace was turned into ashes. His body was also severely injured, and his body was extremely weak. It was not difficult for him to make such a comical move. Soon, Qin Yu and the Dragon Soul arrived at the Fire God Palace again, above the boundless sea of fire. As for the location of the divine hall of the Fire God Palace, it was easy to confirm. It was the towering divine hall that was suspended in the sky. In the entire fire domain, the Fire God Palace was the dominant force, and the surrounding forces could not develop at all. It was a situation where those who obeyed would prosper and those who opposed would perish. Qin Yu looked afar at the majestic and luxurious palace. On the plaque above, there were 3 flamboyant words, Fire God Palace. Before this, Qin Yu had only come to the Sea of Fire with the Dragon Soul. He had never really infiltrated the Fire God Palace. It seems like this is the place. Qin Yu rushed in with the Dragon Soul. He killed the Fire God Palace members who came to stop him. Quick, quick, quick. They are coming in. Activate the barrier quickly. The invisible barrier did stop him, but it was only for a moment. Any defense would be vulnerable in front of the divine fire. It was only the size of a fingernail, but it was enough to break the entire barrier. Chapter 800. In the spiritual land in the deepest part of the Fire God Palace, the Fire God Palace Patriarch was talking to a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man had some stubble on his face, and he looked determined. His aura was harmonious, and his aura was on par with the Fire God Palace Patriarch. 100 years ago, we agreed to meet today. Today, I'm here. Do you welcome me? Hearing the hearty laughter, the Fire God Palace Patriarch laughed as well. Ocean Region's Neptune Palace Master, how can we not welcome you? Who dares to not welcome you? The Neptune Palace Master was here for the appointment. After a short conversation, he noticed something was amiss. Why is the aura on your body so unstable? It seems like you have just been severely injured. He had just been severely injured, and even the spiritual body that he had painstakingly cultivated was destroyed. The Fire God Palace Patriarch couldn't help but clench his teeth in anger when he mentioned this. This matter must never be mentioned again. Originally, I discovered the Fire Emperor's inheritance. This should have been a great thing. However, who would have thought that a quintessential saint stage brat would appear out of nowhere? After snatching the inheritance, he actually didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth and destroyed my spiritual body. As such, it's inevitable that my strength would be affected. After hearing this, the Neptune Palace Master immediately expressed that if that person appeared again, he would definitely kill that person. He was from the sea region, and the Fire Emperor's inheritance was of little use to him. He might as well use it as a favor to befriend a Sky Palace Realm Almighty. As the two of them were chatting, there was a sudden commotion in the spiritual land, forcing the two of them to come out. They saw that there were corpses all over the place. The protective enchantment was shattered into pieces, and only 1/10 of it was left. There were only a handful of people who survived. Qin Yu walked over slowly with the Dragon Soul as though he was patrolling his own territory. The Fire God Palace Patriarch was so angry that his chest hurt. The place where he was previously injured was still hurting. So you're here. I finally forced you out. Qin Yu smiled as he took out the chaotic dragon spear. Let's end this quickly. The Neptune Palace Master took a step forward and appeared in front of the Fire God Palace Patriarch. Even when he realized that there was one more person, Qin Yu's attack didn't stop. Azure Dragon battling the heavens. In a daze, the Sea God Palace's Palace Master seemed to see a giant azure dragon circling around, glaring angrily at him. He raised his head to the sky and let out a long howl as he charged toward him. It was precisely because of the influence of this trace of azure dragon true chi that the Sea God Palace Master unconsciously took out his most powerful defensive technique. However, Qin Yu's real target was the Fire God Palace's Laozu, who was hiding behind him. The tip of the spear shook slightly and brushed past him, aiming straight for the Fire God Palace's old ancestor. This time, there was nowhere to hide. Sacred Flame Shield. He was already injured, and using this move in a moment of panic was only an instinct to save his own life. How could he possibly block Qin Yu's ferocious attack? The outcome of the Fire God Palace's old ancestor was obvious. He was pierced through by the spear. However, the Heavenly Palace level was still a Heavenly Palace level being. Even though he had been pierced by the Chaos Dragon Spear, he was still breathing. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Even the Sea Goddess Palace Master was unable to react in time. By the time he reacted, it was already a foregone conclusion. Even he did not have the ability to reverse the situation. He might as well carry some medicine with him. Although it was extremely precious, it was more important to gain the friendship of a Heavenly Palace level being. No matter what, he was doing a favor at no cost. Even if he had to pay, it would not be too much. Qin Yu was not disappointed at all. If such a simple spear could kill a Heavenly Palace level being, that would be truly strange. As for the one beside him, the dragon soul suddenly said, this person's aura seems to be from the sea region. The Sea Goddess Palace Master from the sea region? I see. Seeing that the two of them were obviously friends, Qin Yu felt that this matter seemed to be a little tricky. The combined strength of two Heavenly Palace level beings was definitely powerful. Even if he had a trump card, things would definitely become troublesome. After swallowing the top-notch medicine, the Fire God Palace's old ancestor had recovered a little. Of course, it was impossible for him to fully recover in a short period of time. However, at least he had regained his vitality. After regaining some strength, the first thing he did was to hold the Sea Goddess Palace Master's hand tightly. You and I have known each other for many years. Why don't you do me a favor and work together to kill this kid? He was about to agree, but on second thought, Qin Yu was someone who had inherited the Fire Emperor's legacy. Although such a person was only at the quintessential saint level, he could severely injure a Heavenly Palace level being at such a low level. Even if he joined in, he would definitely have to pay the price. Speaking of friendship, it was even more nonsense. He knew a little about the things that the Fire God Palace had done all year round. They would slaughter people and plunder their treasures. Of course, in the previous incident, he had also taken a share of the loot. That was why both sides had maintained such a good relationship. This is a grudge between the Fire Domain. I'm just a guest in the Fire Domain. I'm afraid it's not convenient for me to interfere. Obviously, he hesitated. Offending a young man who would definitely have a bright future would not do him any good. The Fire God Palace's old ancestor had known each other for hundreds of years. How could he not know what the Sea Goddess Palace Master was thinking? Gritting his teeth, he still told her about the incident. This kid has a secret skill that can subdue the bloodline of the Dragon Clan. That's the legendary Dragon Clan. He didn't believe that the astute Sea Goddess Hall Master would give up on such a huge benefit. He also did not believe that the current Sea Goddess Palace Master would say something as nonsensical as inconvenient to interfere. Indeed, no one would not covet the legendary Dragon Clan. One had to know that even a dragon with the bloodline of the Dragon Clan was an existence that everyone would fight over. Its strength was so strong that everyone coveted it, not to mention the precious materials on the dragon's body. Whether it was the dragon's tendons, bones, scales, or blood. If it could be tamed, no one would be willing to kill a dragon with the bloodline of the Dragon Clan. It would be the strongest partner and the most trustworthy and loyal subordinate. Is the news reliable? If the news was true, perhaps he could also snatch it. Even if he was a genius, so what? He was a genius who had not grown up yet. No matter how great his achievements would be in the future, at least for now, he could not be compared to the two of them, who were in the Heavenly Palace realm. The conversation between the two was completed in a short time. Qin Yu also wanted to see whether the sea goddess palace master was an enemy or a friend. In the end, as expected, even the people of the sea domain wanted to interfere. However, their purpose this time was not for the Fire Emperor's inheritance. It was for the secret skill to tame the dragon clan's bloodline. Secret skill? Qin Yu pointed the tip of his spear at the sea goddess palace master's face. If you want it, you have to defeat me first. Those who were still alive were in disbelief. Chapter 801. How could someone be so arrogant? To challenge 2 heavenly palace realms when he had just stepped into the quintessential saint realm. Although one of them was severely injured, the gap between the realms wasn't something that could be closed with just a few injuries. Moreover, there was still the Neptune Palace Master. The dragon soul stared at the 2 heavenly palace realms in front of him. Not only was he not suppressed by their aura, but he was also filled with battle intent. He couldn't wait to test his skills against 2 heavenly palace realm experts. This kid is really arrogant. If you don't make a move now, when are you going to wait? The Fire God Palace Patriarch stood up and stared at the Neptune Palace Master. There was no turning back now. Moreover, he really wanted to obtain the secret skill that could tame the Dragon Clan bloodline. Therefore, he could only move forward. Suddenly, he closed his eyes and muttered to himself. Suddenly, the air became humid and fresh, as though they were near the water or the coast. Sky-conquering river. A vast river meandered down like a ribbon. Droplets of water floated in the air, sparkling with light. Water was soft yet firm. The meandering ribbon-like river itself was the most powerful weapon. It was also the strongest combat skill of the Neptune Palace Master. Now that the Neptune Palace Master had taken out his trump card, the Fire God Palace Patriarch no longer hid anything. The fire region was fundamentally different from the sea region. His strongest trump card should have been the Sea of Fire. However, after witnessing Qin Yu's strength, he didn't dare to summon flames. After pondering for a while, he took out an 8 trigrams compass. The word Li lit up and radiated in all directions with the Fire God Palace Patriarch as the center. Waves of heat waves seemed to be roasting all life and squeezing out every last bit of moisture. The sky-conquering river was in front and the heat waves behind. Qin Yu was pincered by 2 heavenly palace realm experts. The front and back were fire and water, forming the 8 trigrams chaotic aura. At this moment, the 2 heavenly palace realm experts had already used all their trump card. Battle dragon coiling. Suddenly, dozens of figures rose behind Qin Yu. They were either roaring ferociously or hovering gently. However, the aura on their bodies was enough to make one shudder. Ancestor demon statue. Suddenly, the area around the Fire God Palace was shrouded by an extremely terrifying aura. An ominous feeling welled up in the Sea Goddess Hall Master's heart. He seemed to have unknowingly provoked a terrifying existence. He was the one who had awakened such a terrifying existence. As soon as the ancestor demon statue appeared, the 2 Heaven Palace tier cultivators were like paper tigers, unable to withstand a single blow. Regardless of whether it was the heavenly river or the airwaves, they were all destroyed. The 2 heavenly palace realm masters fell to the ground like rag dolls. Even before he died, he still could not believe he would die in the hands of a quintessential saint stage powerhouse. This was especially true for the Sea Goddess Hall's Hall Master. At the moment before her death, her heart was filled with regret. Sure enough, he shouldn't have made a move because of that bit of greed. How could someone who had mastered the secret technique to tame the Dragon Clan's bloodline be bullied by him like those people in the past? After the 2 died, the images that filled the sky and the terrifying aura slowly disappeared. However, it left a deep impression on those who were still alive in the Fire God Palace. What the hell is going on? Could it be that my eyes are playing tricks on me? How could the Patriarch die? The Patriarch is dead. The ancestor is really dead. Could it be that the heavens want the Fire God Palace to perish? In just one night, not only did the Palace Master and Deputy Palace Master die, but even the Patriarch who had been protecting the Fire God Palace and had given them their current status had died. If even a heavenly palace realm powerhouse could not withstand it, did they really have any hope of surviving? The ancestor demon statue was powerful, and its destructive power was also quite shocking. There was basically no place under Qin Yu's feet that was safe. He followed the dragon soul to take a look in the sky and saw that the fire god palace was already in chaos. Those who were still alive quickly packed up their belongings and fled. Suddenly, he saw a person who was dressed in bright clothes and seemed to be the leader. He was about to go down and ask for directions. It was too trivial to rely on his eyes to find the real treasure in the huge fire god palace. As soon as he landed, the person saw him and the dragon soul. He was so scared that his legs turned to jelly. He knelt on the ground and kept muttering, "Don't kill me, get up." Qin Yu took 2 steps back in disgust. This person's strength was not bad. He was more or less a fish that had slipped through the net and entered the quintessential saint realm. He did not expect him to be so cowardly that he did not even dare to raise his head to look at him. Just by standing there, he was already scared to this extent. In fact, this person was just frightened by the aura that the ancestor demon statue had just released. He even felt a sense of fear towards the instigator of all this. At this moment, if Qin Yu asked him to go east, he would definitely not dare to go west. Where is the fire god treasure vault? The steward, who was originally trembling in fear, suddenly became energetic. Without another word, he brought Qin Yu to the treasure vault that he had not been to many times before. Because of his deep memory, there were no mistakes in the process. "Don't kill me, I'll leave now." As soon as he brought the person to the place, Qin Yu was wondering if he should give him something as a reward. The person had already turned and ran, and his running speed was actually top-notch. Even in the quintessential saint realm, this person's running speed was enough to be ranked among the best. Puzzled, Qin Yu glanced at the dragon soul standing beside him. "Do I look that scary?" The dragon soul laughed. "Killing 2 heavenly palace realms in one move. No matter how good-looking you are, you'll still scare people to death." Outside the fire god treasure vault, there were naturally several protective measures. There were several keyholes, and there were even more profound passwords inside. As for the key, it was relatively simple. The old ancestor had always carried the key to the fire god treasure vault with him, and the dragon soul had conveniently put it away just now. However, the password inside was somewhat difficult to crack. It could only be opened through various means. In the end, Qin Yu was too lazy to do it slowly, and directly broke through all the protective measures by force. Since he had the strength, why did he have to follow the rules? He could just break through everything with brute force. It had to be said that there were indeed some things inside the fire god treasure vault that was so tightly protected. Inside were various treasures of heaven and earth that the fire god palace had plundered through various means over the years. Not to mention the variety and the value of all the items in the vault, just looking at it alone was a dazzling array of items. It was even more abundant than the inventory of the largest trading center in the fire domain. Now that he had become the master of the fire god palace, he naturally took these items with a smile. There were many treasures of heaven and earth that were really effective for him. He refined them one by one, and soon, he had refined many treasures of heaven and earth. His strength was steadily increasing. During the refining process, it was difficult to feel the passage of time.